This is the special town meeting of the town of Lunenburg, November 13th, 2018. Calling the meeting to order. I declare that the warrant has been properly served and returned according to the records on file at the clerk's office. I declare we have a quorum, which is 50 people eligible to vote. At this point in time, I would ask you to stand, address the flag, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to begin by making sure that all of you notice that the Boys and Girls Club are having a raffle. It is called the 12 Days or So Before Christmas. They are selling tickets outside, so if you didn't get a chance, if you're bored during any of the conversation today, feel free to go out and pick one up. Put your $50 down, Mr. Rogers. I also want to make sure that all of you, if you didn't already, have picked up some of the colored handouts. If you didn't get one, please go out and get them because we're going to be following along according to the article's information that is on the handouts. I want to go over the ground rules as we always do. Please remove your hats when you're indoors in the presence of the American flag. Please turn off your noisemakers, your cell phones, your beepers, and the like. That includes verbal noisemakers that are inappropriate for civil debate. By that, I also mean no booing, hissing, hooting, and hollering. All questions should be addressed to me, and I will seek an answer for you from the necessary boards, committees, or moving parties. Please don't refer to specific individuals by name. Instead, refer to them as the previous speaker, the moving party, the member of the select board or finance committee, etc. Your comments should be at the microphones. There are 2 in the aisles. There's one over here on the floor. You can come up and use mine if you wish. If I give it up, we'll see. I will stand at the microphone. I will try to get everybody recognized that's standing at the microphone. Try to take them in order. But if I feel that I need to call on the select board or the finance committee, I will do that as well, or if I need to call on the town manager. If you can't get to the microphone, if you have a handicap of any sort, just let somebody know that's sitting near you, and we'll be glad to have the microphone passed to you. The moving party will be allowed to speak first. They'll be giving adequate time to present the article. Thereafter, speakers should try to keep it brief. Keep your comments to just a couple of minutes. Other than the moving party, I will allow you to speak a second time, but I would ask you to be considerate of people who've not gotten a chance to speak and who might be standing in line behind you. Amendments to articles, other than things that are very simple, must be in writing. And there are forms at the bottom of each microphone, and we'd ask you to fill them out so that we have exactly what you've said. Moving the question is a process of cutting off debate. It must be done at the microphone. It must be seconded. There must be a 2/3 vote to see if the question is moved, meaning the debate is cut off. However, I have the authority to say that there's just too many people that still need to speak, so I'll call that out of order at that time. Every article or motion will be first put to a voice vote. I'll declare whether the article or the motion has passed or failed. If you believe I got it wrong, it has happened, I think, once. 7 voters may stand and challenge it by just saying, I doubt it. Make sure you stand and you say, I doubt it. If there are 7 people, then we will have it counted by hand. You all got a card, minus a lovely lavender. This is how you're going to vote if we do a hand count, okay? You'll hold up your card, and we have counters already designed for that. Reconsideration of a previous vote. If you believe that maybe there's something that needed to be said that wasn't said, either the prevailing or the losing party may ask for reconsideration. But I won't permit it if there's been a large change in the population here at the meeting, because it would be unfair to do it that way. Guests should be seated over here on my right, your left. Guests that wish to speak would have to have somebody that's a voter rise and ask permission for them to speak. And of course, guests don't vote. This town conducts its business by town meeting time. When they review the charter and approve the charter, I believe that will then become part of the charter's law. But it's very similar to Robert's Rules of Order. It's available in the library, and is generally what towns follow. We want you to participate in this process. There are 2 articles that are citizens' articles on this particular warrant. There have been many years, most years, there are articles. So if you have questions about how to go about the process, call me. I'm in the phone book. I'm in the yellow pages. Call town manager. Call somebody that you know that's on one of the various different committees. We want to help you get those things through if you're not familiar with it. We're not trying to hide it from you. We're trying to promote that. We want fair debate. We don't want to exclude anybody. I assume that on some of the articles, which are zoning articles, that the body will approve, unless I hear someone object, that instead of reading the entire thing, which might take a half an hour, that it be presented on the board as long as we can read it. I don't see anybody or hear anybody objecting, so I think we'll go ahead and do that as we usually have. So at this point in time, I would like to recognize Mr. Toll.
Thank you. Lunenburg, as he will step down as Vice Chair of the Board of Selectmen and the Chair of the Charter Review Committee at the end of this month. Mr. Ebersol has been involved in town government his whole life, and the concept of giving to the town is part of who he is. As a selectman, Bob has been part of the process to hire a new town manager, town council, and school superintendent. He has also played a major role in supporting the building of a new middle high school and a major pavement and road improvement project through debt exclusion. His experience in town government began when he joined the fire department as an on-call firefighter at age 16. Bob also served as a reserve officer and continued to serve the town in the following capacities over the years: the planning board from 77 to 82, the MRPC town representative in 1978, the 250th Anniversary Committee Treasurer in 1978, on the Board of Health as an agent in 1978 to 89, on the Computer Advisory Committee 1987 to 89, the Town Clerk, Treasurer, and Collector from 1983 to 89, the Registrar of Voters from 1983 to 88, on the Building Committee in 1987 to 90, on the Sewer Commission from 2010 to 2013 as the Chair. He's been on the Board of Selectmen from 2013 and he's presently the Vice Chair, and he's on the Charter Review Committee since 2017 as its present Chair. He is a wealth of how and why things are done in this town, and he clearly is an asset to the town that will be missed. Thank you, Bob Ebersol.
Thank you, Mr. Toll. Thank you, Mr. Ebersol. I should have mentioned that if the Select Board or the Finance Committee had not made a recommendation prior to tonight, they're going to listen to the debate. At that point in time, I will ask them for their recommendation, and they will do a roll call after they've had a chance to discuss it. They'll be discussing it at their microphones, so I don't know how loud they'll be, but if you absolutely need to understand what each and every one of them is saying, I think they'll get a chance to address the issue as well. So you can wait for that opportunity. You can come huddle around if you wish, but either way, when they're done with their discussion, then they will announce how they voted on each and every article. So Mr. Toll, we're ready for Article 1.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to transfer $25,500 from line 4, liability insurance, to line 29, technology director budget for software maintenance costs, and to transfer $7,200 from line 13A, salary reserve, to line 82, library, for additional monies for library salaries, to amend the amounts voted under Article 7 of the May 5th, 2018 annual town meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Tell us about the article, Mr. Toll.
This article is an annual article at the fall special town meeting in order to make any necessary budget adjustments. The town manager will ask any questions on these transfers, and the library director will answer technical questions related to the transfer from the salary reserve line to the library budget.
And she has a handout.
Yes.
It's green. It's money.
So good evening, everyone, and welcome. Can you hear me? Okay. All right. So for Article 1 and 2, please refer to your green handout. And One side is the revenue and expenditures balance sheet. The other side has information on Article 1 and 2, the figures. So Article 1 is typically an article in the fall special town meeting warrant to make any necessary budget adjustments to the current fiscal year. Annual town meeting in May appropriates the annual budget by functional category, such as general government, DPW, and library. In order to increase the appropriation or transfer funds from an available source to these functional categories, it requires town meeting authorization, except for end-of-year transfers. There are two transfers being recommended at this town meeting. One for $25,500 from the liability insurance line to the technology budget line for software maintenance costs for permitting software, and one for $7,200 from the salary reserve line to the library line for an increase to library salaries that will be used for additional staff hours for a pilot reading program that provides classroom visits to the library for Turkey Hill Elementary students during classroom hours. This new program is a collaboration between the library and the school, and it is a common goal for both the library and the school to get kids excited about reading. The software maintenance expense is for the annual renewal and support of our electronic permitting software for various departments. At the time of the annual town meeting, it was thought this was payable later in the fiscal year, and the technology revolving account would have close to a year's worth of deposits that would offset this expense, and that the budget adjustment would be done in May. Since this is payable now, a transfer is needed to the IT director's budget to cover this expense, and the finance director will make an adjustment to that account at the end of the year with the receipts from the technology revolving account, and this will offset that expense. Any remainder in the line will fall towards free cash. As presented, Article 1 has a net zero effect to the fiscal 19 omnibus budget, as the funds are being transferred from one line to another.
Questions about Article 1? Seeing no one at the microphone, I declare that we're ready to vote. Select Board, if you could give us your recommendation. And Finance, if you could give us your recommendation when you're ready as well.
I move that we recommend approval.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Recommend
Okay.
approval.
Thank you. And Finance. Push the button. There you go. Push.
Push it when okay, I'm sorry. All right, the Finance Committee recommends approval with a vote of 4 to 2 with 1 abstention.
Thank you. All right. This is a majority vote. All those in favor of Article 1, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Article 2, Mr. Ebersol.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $199,227 to the Special Purpose Stabilization Fund.
Is there a second? Second. And you're going to make your recommendation after the discussion? Anybody at the microphone? Are you going to make a presentation, Ms. Lemieux?
Yes.
You can if you want.
Okay. So the town has the capacity to raise and appropriate $199,227 to the Special Purpose Stabilization Account due to the fact that state aid and property tax revenues came in higher than the estimates used at the annual town meeting. And on the expense side, the cherry sheet offsets, state and county charges, and choice and charter assessments came in lower than the estimates used at the annual town meeting. This chart shows that we have an additional $77,409 in revenues. And this chart shows the reduction in cherry sheet offsets, state and county charges, and choice and charter assessments totaling $121,818. The total available for appropriation is $199,227. The recommendation is to raise and appropriate these funds into a special purpose stabilization fund that was established at the May 6, 2017 annual town meeting for future vehicle and equipment projects that were identified in the town's capital plan. Putting aside funds into the special purpose stabilization fund subsidizes the annual appropriation for the capital plan in years that spike based on needs in the capital plan, saves money by deferring debt and interest payments for large capital items, manages the town's debt. In an advisory on special purpose stabilization funds in March of 2018, the Division of Local Services, which is under the Department of Revenue, said a plan to accumulate cash over time and pay outright for a moderate range capital expenditure helps preserve debt capacity for major, higher dollar purchases or projects. An approach that balances debt with pay-as-you-go practices and protects against unforeseen costs is viewed in a positive light by credit rating agencies. And just as a footnote, the balance in the Special Purpose Stabilization Fund as of now is $436,930. The Capital Planning Committee is in the process of meeting with departments this month to update the 5-year capital plan. The figures in this chart summarize the needs of the town over the next 5 years and include the figures that have been received to date. The average over the 5 years exceed $1 million each year. The town faces significant capital needs in the next 5 years, and continuing to put aside funds for these projects will subsidize the annual capital budget when there are spikes in certain fiscal years. This is why the recommendation before you tonight is to appropriate these funds and put them into the Special Purpose Stabilization Fund.
Thank you. Anyone want to discuss or debate Article 2? Seeing no one at the microphone, I'll ask the Select Board to caucus and give us your recommendation, and same from Finance.
Move that we recommend approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We recommend approval.
Finance, rather?
The Finance Committee at its last meeting last week voted 7-0 to recommend approval based on the prudent use of unanticipated funds from new growth to allow the town to reduce future debt service costs for known capital expenditures.
Thank you. Because this deals with the stabilization fund, it requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor of Article 2, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Article 3, Mr. McQuaid.
From Article 7 of the May 5th, 2018 Annual Town Meeting, line 13A, Salary Reserve Fund, the sum of $8,000,000, no, 8,000, oh, Mr. Wish we had that much money.
It's a lot of salary.
Yeah, $8,049.80 to fund the first year of FY19 to FY21, Lunenburg Laborers International Union, Public Employees Local 39 Collective Bargaining Agreement dated July 1, 2018 to June 30, 2021.
Is there a second? Second. Selectmen, your recommendation.
Board of Selectmen recommends approval.
Finance Committee.
The Finance
Shout it out, Terry.
Well, you don't want me to now, it's working. The Finance Committee finds it as a legitimate expenditure as a result of collective bargaining, and so recommends approval 7-0.
Tell us what we need to know about this, Mr. McQuaid or Ms. Lemieux.
This article is to fund the first year of the DPW union agreement for FY 2019. The town manager can answer any questions if there are any.
Any questions about Article 3? I know you people are out there. I can hear you breathing. No? All right. All those in favor of Article 3, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Article 4, Ms. Luck.
I move that the town vote to appropriate the following amounts from the net premium paid to the town upon the sale of the town's $3,685,000 general obligation municipal purpose loan of 2018 bonds dated April 25th, 2018. $104,659.15 to pay costs of the pavement management project being financed by such bonds, and to reduce the amount authorized to be borrowed for such project by a like amount.
Is there a second?
Second.
Selectmen, your recommendation.
Board of Selectmen recommend approval.
Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee, finding that it's a non-recurring source of revenue used to reduce debt service costs for a non-recurring expenditure, recommends approval, 7-0.
Thank you. Anyone want to ask questions about Article 4? Do you want to tell us what this is about, Ms. Luck?
The Finance Director will answer any questions.
Why don't you just tell us what it's about? I didn't understand it.
In April of 2018, the town issued bonds for the pavement management plan, and at the time of issuance, we received a premium in the amount of $121,623.19. Once all the expenses related to the issuance of the bond were paid, the net premium was $104,659.15, and what we're looking to do is just appropriate those dollars into the project and reduce borrowing by the same amount of money for the pavement management plan.
Excellent. Seeing no one at the microphone, I'll declare we're ready to vote. Because this is a special town meeting, it requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Article 6. 5, excuse me. Ms. Adams.
Okay. Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to transfer $6,449.63 from the sewer enterprise retained earnings to the reserve capacity stabilization fund.
Is there a second? I understand the selectmen and finance are going to make their recommendation at the meeting. Anybody want to tell us about it, Ms. Adams? What is this about?
Okay, it says the sewer commissioner is to answer any questions and has one slide.
If there are any questions. Oh, don't seem to be any questions. Select Board, if you could caucus and give us your recommendation. Same with finance.
I recommend that we approve this article.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Selectmen recommend approval.
Thank you. Finance?
The Finance Committee finds no direct financial effect because this is a transfer of money within the sewer enterprise fund and has no effect on their resources.
Thank you. All those in favor of Article 5, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. We are on a roll, folks. Article 6.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Eversole.
I move that the town vote to hear an interim report from the Charter Review Committee.
Is there a second? Selectmen, your recommendation?
We recommend approval.
Finance?
We find no direct financial effect.
All right. Even though it's the charter. All right. And I believe there's a handout, a white handout, I'm told.
Mr. Moderator, I won't read the entire report. It's available here. The report and the current draft charter were put up on the town's website today. A paper copy is available at the library, the senior center, and the town clerk's office. The charter provides that every 10 years we should review the charter with a special committee. The members include 2 members from the Selectmen, myself and Jamie Toll, Finance Committee, Terry Birchfeld and Mark Erickson, School Committee appointees Heather Stroka and Jim Levesque, replacing Katie Adams and Michael Mackin, who were there until June of 2018. Planning Board, Michael Reyes Jeffries, and Town Moderator appointees Nancy Gray and Steve Archambault. The committee has done a lot of work. We came to the April hearing knowing that we were not unanimous on where we needed to go, and we've heard various suggestions for improvements. We have since gone back and simplified our proposal. We still have work to do. We believe that the charter generally works. and it's important to review it as the town grows and evolves. Most of the changes are typographical error corrections, changing wording to be clearer, and ensuring that one section of the charter is consistent with others. There are some substantial changes that we're proposing, and similar to what you received from the Secretary of State's office this year, we will have pro and con sides listed for proposing to change the name of the selectman from selectman to select board. We will have pro and con sections for changing the elected town clerk position to one being appointed position. We are proposing that persons appointed to town committees be registered to vote in town so they can participate in town meeting and vote. We're proposing to officially have a second town meeting in the fall of every year set by bylaw, and that's known every year so we can split the work between spring and fall. As town moderator mentioned earlier, to officially state that we operate by town meeting time, clarifying the appointment powers of the selectmen and the town manager. We have taken out the, we had originally proposed that the town accountant would be appointed by the town manager. We are retaining that with the Board of Selectmen. Clarifying the duties of the town manager regarding today's world with personnel management and day-to-day operations. Providing more specifics for the process of removal and suspension of the town manager, which we are not proposing at the moment. It's important to state that, but it's important to have the rules in case you have to do it. Coming from citizens that the committee is supporting, requiring a minimum number of votes for write-in candidates where there are no names on the ballot. That minimum number would be similar to what is required to get your name on the ballot, and making other grammatical and phrasing changes. There were several changes that we considered, but we did not include, and those include representative town meeting. We didn't believe Lunenburg was quite ready for it. Term limits for elected officials, and ranked choice voting, which will probably come at some point in the future. We will continue to meet with the various committees. Our next meeting is the last Wednesday of this month, and we already have the Cemetery Commission coming to talk to us, and other committees may talk to us as well. We will be having 2 public hearings that will be publicized in advance, and those will be posted on YouTube as well. I want to thank the members of the Charter Review Committee. It's been a very thoughtful process. I appreciate the town officials and committee members to providing feedback for the process. So this is expected to be presented back to town meeting at the May annual town meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eversole. There's no action for us to be taken, so we're not going to take a vote on Article 6. You've heard your report. Article 7, Mr. Toll.
I move that the town vote to amend the Code of Lunenburg, Chapter 70, entitled Salary Administration Plan as follows. To amend Sections 70.17, 70.21, and 70.28 as shown in the pink handout entitled Amendments to the Salary Administration Plan Bylaw, dated October 22nd, 2018, with the additions to the bylaw underlined and deletions stricken through.
Second.
Thank you. You're going to make your recommendation after the discussion. Any discussion on the salary administration plan? Any questions? Do you want to tell us what this is basically about, Mr. Toll?
They're in the the changes are in the pink handout, and the town manager can cover it or answer any questions.
I can give a synopsis of each section, if you would like.
Say it again.
I can give a synopsis of each section.
Why don't you give us a synopsis?
Yeah, okay. So refer to your pink handout. And so Section 17 is our amendments that are made and that are similar in language to our other collective bargaining agreements. And it also covers that vacation time is accrued to be used on July 1st for salary employees covered under the salary administration plan, as well as it covers carryover of up to 2 weeks vacation if there are extenuating circumstances, and any unused payout vacation time changes from the first payroll, changes to the first payroll in July instead of the last payroll in June. Section 21 covers the FMLA, so it makes it the language similar to the town's policy, in conformance with the town's policy, and Section 28 deletes the sentence that hourly employees are not eligible for benefits.
That's it, thank you. Anybody else on this particular article? Selectmen, if you could caucus and give us your recommendation, same with finance.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Selectmen recommend approval.
Thank you. Finance?
The Finance Committee recommends approval, given that, particularly that there's no direct financial, I'm sorry, what did we?
We recommended no direct financial effect.
I'm sorry. We recommended no direct financial effect, as this will not add any employees or temporary workers, and the accrual of earned time is ongoing, so we don't find a direct financial impact to the current budget.
Thank you. Sir?
Mr. Moderator, Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. Just a quick question on the sentence that is stricken from the last paragraph on the back page from section 28. It doesn't seem to be fitting to for that to be stricken from that paragraph, in that it appears to me, the way I interpret the wording of the paragraph, that would mean that all hourly employees, no matter how many hours they worked, are not eligible for benefits. I find that rather strange.
Stay right there, Mr. Passios. I think you're asking a question. Is that something you can answer, Ms. Lemieux, or address?
The statement itself that hourly employees are not eligible for benefits is not accurate, because any employee that works 20 or more hours a week is eligible for benefits.
So I guess my question is, why is that sentence being struck from that? It states what they're entitled to already. Why shouldn't it stay in there?
Mr. Moderator?
Mr. Eversole.
So if somebody's working 22 hours a week and are eligible for benefits, but they're an hourly employee, this section would say they're not eligible for those benefits. And that's why this sentence is being taken out. It's not that, because it would be salary or hourly. We have a separate section that says if you work 20 hours or more, you're eligible for benefits. This was put in someplace way back when. We don't know why it was there.
Okay, I'll accept that answer, except that it always worries me when something's removed when nobody knows why it was put there. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, you have to stand up to the microphone, even you.
You have to be,
even you. The exercise is good for us, sir.
Yeah, obviously. I resemble that remark. Dave Rogers, 82 Highland Street. Would someone please explain to us what the current set of vacation pay is? And I'm not quite sure if there is no financial impact here. It would seem to me that there's got to be. But let's go by the numbers and tell us what the current situation is relative to paid vacation.
That's something you can do for us, Ms. Lemieux?
I believe so. So the language that was stricken from the handout, so the 10 months, let's take that for an example. So the current situation is the employee would have to work 10 months before they'd receive vacation time, and it wouldn't be until the following July 1st. So this, regardless of your hire date within the fiscal year, you start accruing vacation time, 8 hours per month, full month during that fiscal year, and it would be granted on July 1st.
And what currently is it?
There are situations currently that that employee would have to wait more than a year for their award for vacation. So we're making it similar to our other collective bargaining employees within town, the language to be synonymous with that.
But they still earn the vacation
Yes.
for the time that they're working now, it's just they can't take it until later. So there's no financial change, it's just timing of when they can start taking it.
So using that scenario, it's 2 weeks vacation after a year's time,
Correct.
today,
Right.
now. And 3 weeks after 5, and 4 weeks after 10, and 5 weeks after 20.
Yes.
Okay.
So all the amounts of vacation time is staying the same.
Okay, so there's no change in the vacation? Okay.
Correct.
That's fine. Going forward, I mean, I respectfully request that this type of situation be detailed to us so we know what the ramifications are. Just reading this doesn't tell us that. And I know that everybody's busy, but for old people like me, it would sure help. Thanks.
Anyone else on Article 7? Declare we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. And Mr. Rogers, I know that there was a poll on discussing Lunenburg. So for those of you that need to know, see who's going to win the pool, when we started the meeting, we were at 179. I did see 3, 4, 5 people arrive, so we're somewhere around 184, 185.
When do I pick up the car, Mr. Moderator?
Soon. And we are ready for Article 8, Mr. McQuaid.
I move that the town vote to pass over Article 8.
Is there a second? Tell us why we're passing it over, or you're recommending that, Mr. McQuaid.
We are passing over this article because the town has been offered to be part of a salary benchmarking pilot through a company that will offer this service free of charge, valued at $5,000.
All right. Selectmen, prepared to make a recommendation about passing over? And Finance?
I move we recommend passing over. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Recommend approval of passing it over.
Thank you. Finance?
The Finance Committee is happy to pass over an article that says we don't have to spend money.
Exactly. All those in favor of passing over Article 8, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Nothing but unanimous tonight. Article 9, noise control. Ms. Luck.
I move that the town vote to amend the Code of Lunenburg by adding a new chapter, 174, entitled Noise Control, as shown on the blue handout entitled Noise Control Bylaw, dated October 17, 2018.
Second?
Second. You're going to make your recommendation after the discussion. I know there'll be some discussion on this. Want to tell us what the article is about first, Ms. Luck?
You need to refer to the blue handout, and
Okay.
the police chief will make the recommendation.
Okay.
We'll discuss.
Chief, why don't you get up to the microphone, because I'm thinking there'll be some questions. All right, you be ready. Right here. Miss, you're up. Give us your name and your address, please.
Barbara Morrison, 14 Elizabeth Street.
Keep your voice up, okay?
Okay. I wanted to speak a little bit on the proposed article. The problem that I have with it is that it seems redundant. It seems like we already have laws on the books for disturbing the peace, things like that. And I don't like the idea of the government overreaching into private affairs on private property. I value my peace and quiet, just like anyone else, but I also think that when it rises to a level of being excessive or injurious, that there's already ways for the police to address that. I respect our police, and I want them to be able to devote their time to the important issues, like keeping us safe, and not electronic devices, playing music at a backyard barbecue, and running your car for more than 5 minutes. When it's sub-zero, I run my car for at least 5 minutes to warm it up in my driveway, and while I don't think that the article was written intended to penalize me for doing that, it could penalize me for doing that, the way that it's written. That worries me. Anyone who's in violation of the proposed article would be slapped with a misdemeanor charge, which makes them a criminal. I don't really think that we should be making our citizens criminals for running their car or playing loud music. Thank you.
Stay right there. Do you want to address some of those things, Chief? And even though you're in uniform, please tell us who you are.
Jim Marino, Police Chief, 916 Chase Road. Let me just talk a little bit about how this all came about and what does the bylaw do. The bylaw limits the level of noise emissions or undesirable noise intrusions within the community produced by commercial and non-commercial activities. The bylaw takes into consideration the police department's observations as to how the community has reacted to noise conditions in the past and how much quiet the community is comfortable with. Why? Well, because Lunenburg continues to increase in population and can no longer be characterized as a rural community. And so noise produced by human activities increases, and consequently the potential sources of noise pollution are imminent. Therefore, some means of control have become necessary. The law is quantitative in nature as it defines the prohibitive noise by its character or nature and restricts activities at certain hours of the day. However, it is also quantitative in as much as it does apply scientific standards of sound intensity and frequency as noted in Section 5, which refers to the noise level and noise pollution, which I think might answer the car running unattended. By the way, an unattended vehicle running is a violation of Mass General laws as it is. The bylaw, the noise control bylaw is tailored to meet the enforcement needs of the community and seeks to protect the majority of citizens from unwarranted noise and activities, which most people would find unreasonably disruptive or annoying and would infringe upon someone's right to be undisturbed. As I said, if you read the bylaw, you'll see that I can't tell you can let your car run unattended, but we all do it to defrost the windshields and so on and so forth. Obviously, you'd want it locked to prevent any theft. And I'm not being condescending, believe me, I get it.
Chief, I have trouble hearing you, and I'm this close. Pull it right up. Get comfortable.
Yeah. I think if you read the bylaw, it really wouldn't pertain to that example that you gave, and I think, I don't want to sound, again, I don't want to sound condescending, but it's not really a good example. This is really not what the bylaw is about. Obviously, the police aren't going to come to your house and fine you for leaving your car running because you want to defrost your windows. That's not what it's about. It's about loud music. It's about commercial air conditioners that are keeping you up at night. It's why are there are state laws governed by the DEP. They're the only ones that can enforce it. That's why they encourage towns to enact bylaws so that the town can enforce it. We just happen to be the enforcement agency. So don't kill the messenger, so to speak. But it's all about growth. The town's beginning to grow. We're trying to respond to that. We've had a lot of input from residents over the years. I mean, I've been doing this job for 39 years. A lot of input from residents over that period of time with respect to situations that cause unreasonable noise that we were never able to do too much about. The state law concerning disturbing the peace wouldn't apply to a lot of these different situations. We couldn't go into a business and say, we're going to charge you with disturbing the peace because your air conditioner, your commercial air conditioner on the roof's making way too much noise to keep the lady up next door. Couldn't really do that. In this case, we could go in and obviously make the person aware of that situation and have them correct it. And if they didn't correct it, obviously then then we'd have some kind of authority to force the issue. And that's what this is really about.
Thank you. Did you want to say one thing to follow up? Otherwise, I'm going to go over here.
I just wanted to say that it seems like it's written broadly enough that we don't know how it may be enforced, and that's my main issue with it, along with the playing music being still relevant to the article. Thank you.
Thank you. Over here.
Hi, Dawn Marie Ailes, 711 Flat Hill Road. My question about the article is in response to generators. I know a lot of us lose power here in Lunenburg, and we use generators throughout the night to keep our families warm and comfortable. How does that work in terms of the exemptions, because it's not listed?
Yeah, it's not, but would your generator exceed 10 decibels, do you think, above ambient? I doubt it.
Very much so.
Yes?
Okay, hold on. Ms. Adams, she's got some information about decibels.
Well, no, I was thinking about
sorry.
the generator because that came up
Generators,
earlier. And if you go to section, the exemptions, and you go to number 5, and it talks about emergency mechanical devices. And then there was if you follow that up and go to the definition section where it says emergency work, it says an exemption would be when there's emergency work associated with property damage. And so I think when you're talking about like a generator that's keeping your heat on, if you follow it from the exemption 5 and then go to the definition of emergency work and property damage, I think a generator usually is there to, property damage would be a refrigerator, all the damage associated with losing power to that. So, yeah, so I think you can follow it like that and it would, okay.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that was pertinent on people's radar when agreeing to this article. Thank you.
We don't usually lose our power in Lunenburg, so we'll be all set. Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Moderator, Perry Jewell, 20 Sunset Lane. I think, we're all sympathetic to the basic intent, of this. My concern, although you said it was quantitative, was that it's kind of relatively quantitative. It says 10 dBs above the ambient, which is, I guess, like about a factor of 3 in loudness over the ambient. But then the ambient is kind of vaguely defined, in my opinion, as it talks about the ambient being the level of sound that is exceeded 90% of the time, which is a pretty low number, I think. And it's obviously going to be different in different places. I would presume it would be applied where, the noise nuisance is occurring. And I don't know how you can do both those at the same time. And then there's a question like with an ambient, is it an instantaneous ambient? Is it an ambient, averaged over an hour, over 2 days, over that day of the week? It'll be different. It comes down to enforceability, I guess, and trying to understand, how you set that ambient, which is really the whole basis for then what's considered a nuisance. And there's one other piece of it that troubles me separately, and that's the piece that says that anything that's sort of licensed by state or federal, or has the proper noise suppression on it, I guess, that would be allowed or would be required by state or federal, would be excluded from this. So that I would think that, unless I'm misinterpreting that, a motorcycle that had, an approved muffler or something like that would be okay, regardless of how much noise it might seem to make. So those are kind of the two questions. The one has to do with the fact that it seems like it's rather arbitrary what the ambient level is or how you measure the ambient level, which would then become the basis for, what's excessive. And I could see people coming in and arguing that your measurement of the ambient was wrong. From a standpoint of enforceability, or it just seems like kind of a nightmare the way we're defining it.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, and I'm not disagreeing with you, I said that the law is also qualitative as well as quantitative, and mostly, because it is subjective. So aren't many laws. I end up in court often because of these things. Most laws, and a lot of this language is taken right out of the state law, and of course we looked at several other bylaws. So yeah, it's open to interpretation, but so isn't 99% of the Mass General laws, which unfortunately that's the role of the courts to make a final decision on or decisions that I guess the police make. But
Yeah, since you'll be, I'm sorry.
I'm just reacting to, I'm reacting to the needs of the populace here, and by proposing this, but here we are in a democratic society, so I'm listening to you, and I get it. The laws tend to be subjective, and this one is, and noise, anything you read about noise, pollution control laws, many are objective, because we don't, I mean, you know, we're not scientists, so to actually go around and, you know, quantitatively measure noise pollution, that's really not our role. I'm trying to think of you had another question in there.
Well, it had to do with the federal, like say, something having an approved muffler.
You mentioned mufflers, but again, that's regulated under Chapter 90, Section 18. That's a whole different regulation, specifically for motorcycles and car exhaust systems. So obviously, we'd rely on something like that in a case that involved mufflers. I think it mentions in the bylaw that dogs barking, that's another different bylaw, so that it doesn't conflict with other laws and bylaws and so forth. Different regulations. So I don't know what to tell you. Maybe town council can weigh in on this. We talked about the fact that these are sometimes subjective, and I'm just here putting it in front of everybody. Whatever you decide to do, I fully support it. So.
Elaborate, town council. Tell us about noise.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So I'd like to, I guess, first compliment Chief Marino on his efforts here, because crafting these noise control bylaws is challenging. I've had occasion myself to work with a number of different communities who have adopted bylaws similar to what you have here. And there are two challenges. I think the first is structuring it so that it provides for what we have here, which is both a qualitative and a quantitative standard. The second challenge is finding a way to address enforceability, and that, as the chief said, that's a problem really with no matter what type of bylaw you might be speaking of. Enforceability is always the greatest challenge. How do you enforce? What's the mechanism for enforcement? What's the penalty to be paid? I think that this bylaw, and I had occasion to review a number of drafts. I worked with the chief as it was reviewed and modified a number of times over the course of the past year or so. What this bylaw does first in terms of defining the standard is it uses this term excessive or unwarranted noise, and it defines that as any noise that results in either number one, noise pollution, or number two, noise injury. And those two terms, noise pollution and noise injury, are given definitions in the definition section. Noise pollution is the quantitative standard. It speaks of this 10 dBA. And noise injury is the more qualitative standard. It speaks about the sorts of noises that cause injury to health or humans, endangers or injures personal or real property. That's the more subjective or the more qualitative standard. And then really much of the remainder of the bylaw is meant to address all of the various circumstances where the bylaw doesn't apply, the exceptions to the rule. So you've got section 4, which is entitled exemptions, but then even if you go back into section 3, which is the actual prohibition, the subsections A through H really are restrictions on the very authority of the bylaw, trying to recognize that there are those circumstances where noise should not be controlled. For example, during daytime hours, many noises are permissible where they might not be permissible in the evening hours. So that's how we went about trying to craft the bylaw to provide for the flexibility in the form of both a subjective qualitative standard as well as the more quantitative standard. 10 dBA is a significant increase above ambient. I refer to this handy chart, and I pulled it up here because I thought the question might arise, because it arises in almost every town meeting where one of these bylaws is discussed. And so, you know, you've got
an average conversation in an office or a restaurant is 60 decibels. To jump up to 70, you're talking about a passenger car at 65 miles an hour. It's a twofold increase over 60 decibels. To go up 10 more to 80, you're talking about a freight train. To go up 10 more to 90, you're talking about a Boeing 737. So the increase of 10 dBA is a fairly significant increase, and yes, enforcement is always challenging. There are noise level meters that can be utilized. I'm no acoustical engineer, so I can't speak to the technicalities of it, but the quantitative standard is a challenging standard to enforce. That's why we've got the qualitative standard to give some flexibility to the police department to enforce this when necessary. But certainly the objective here is to provide all of the various exemptions so that backyard parties with reasonable music, running your vehicle in your driveway to warm it up for 5 or 10 minutes in the mornings, those sorts of things, number one, are not going to create the sort of 10 decibel increase that's been suggested here. And number two, in many of those instances, there are exemptions that are provided for and written right into the bylaw.
Good.
Just my only point there was, I know that 10 dBs is quantitative, like a factor of 3 in loudness. But the point was it was over ambient, and the definition of ambient was very vague to me in terms of being defined as the level that 90% of the noise was above. So that, and then it wasn't for over what period of time and in what location. I would presume it would be in the same location, which would make it quite relative to the different parts of town or what's going on. And I'm sympathetic to the subject, don't misunderstand me. I'm just empathizing with the chief and others who would try to enforce this when you have such a vague definition of what's the base that the 10 dBs are above. And that was my only point, is it seems unenforceable to me. But
thank you. Yeah. Sir?
Darren Massey, 300 Holman Street, Lunenburg.
Mr. Massey, the registrar tells me that you're not registered to vote, so I'm perfectly happy to let you speak about this. If somebody wants to, Mr. Passios would sponsor Mr. Massey to state his opinion.
Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. I agree to sponsor Mr. Massey to speak.
Excellent. Mr. Massey, please.
Thank you. I think I need to credit Mr. Dave Rogers for sharing with me the information that for a noise ordinance, this procedure has been rather quiet in our public. I duly note that the chief has been sharing this with the town legal counsel, though I would move rather that we have this conversation much more deliberately in the public forum, that we establish a committee, that we actually address all the definitions to the point most recently mentioned of the ambient noise, that we come to much more specific definitions, that we do this in an open forum. The only public access that I had in this process was to attend a Board of Selectmen meeting where it was presented at the Board of Selectmen meeting. I was told at that meeting that that was just an information meeting for this ordinance. I thereafter attended a second meeting where it was discussed. So one meeting that I was aware of at a Board of Selectmen meeting to discuss the details. I think we as a town need to defer this, and I would move that this be deferred until a future town meeting. And in the interim, we have a committee that all these definitions could be flushed out, that we could actually have examples of what is 10 decibels. I've had a recent example of hosting an event where the public was invited to attend, where we monitored the decibels, and I've now educated myself of what is 10 decibels. I think it would serve the community to have specific examples of what ambient noise is and 10 decibels. That's the one. Additional points I'd like to make, just as a psychiatrist, I go into many houses in our community. I've invited in to see people with mental illness. Many people in this community suffer from loneliness, suffer from lack of connection. Many of the functions and events that we all have, that we all enjoy, at least most of us enjoy, I would like to continue to encourage And I would like a committee in the future to look at proposing an ordinance that does not mitigate those events, the homecoming events, the snow riders parties, family reunions, weddings, all the events that create increasing healthy connection and mitigate loneliness in our community. That's certainly what I stand for. Additional points representing the Lunenburg Business Association. There are many businesses in town that may or may not, though in my judgment, will be negatively impacted. Their finances and their marketing capacity will be negatively impacted in the way this ordinance is written to date. Again, I propose putting forward an open committee over the next months prior to the next town meeting to look at this in an open forum so that we could ensure we're not doing collateral damage to many of the businesses in this town. And by there, many of the finances that affect many of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I see you standing there. Somebody from finance needs to speak, and I'm never going to pass over the representative of the Great and General Court. Please.
Me? Okay.
Yeah.
Jennifer Benson, 1010 Flat Hill Road. Under Section 3, prohibition of excessive noise or unwarranted noise, letter D is musical instruments. I have a concern about this, especially since my son is a drummer.
Oh.
And we have had many section practices of the high school marching band at my house. And so at the least, I would offer an amendment.
An amendment?
I would like to offer an amendment to include the similar hours of the previous 3 sections of between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m.
Can you write that down?
Yes.
It's been seconded. Okay, so we'll continue to discuss the article in general, but then we'll come back and we'll do the amendment first and then the article. Do you need a pen?
No.
Excellent. Write down exactly what you want, and then we'll get... She's going to write it. Excellent. Sir.
Steve Archambault, 662 Page Street. I just wanted to reiterate what 10 decibels is. It is not just 10, it's 100 times stronger. You have to think of the Richter scale earthquakes, level 2 earthquake, a level 3. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's literally 100 to 1,000 times stronger. So in order to hear something twice as loud, you have to go 10 decibels. Will make it twice as loud. You need 100 times, you need to increase the power by quite a bit. So you've got to, we really have to educate the public what 10 decibel means, because 10 sounds like it's just a little bit louder when it's really 100 times louder, or 100 times more powerful, which we see as twice as loud.
Thank you.
Right, yeah.
This member of the Finance Committee, you're up. Press your button. Yep. Yeah, press your name and address, and you press the button.
Hannah Anderson, 780 West Street. I guess I just have a question for you, would be, which I think it's actually been answered. So all of these in your noise control bylaw, it's not 10 to 6 for everything. It's only on those specific ones that say 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. that there's that time frame. Because during the day, I was just curious if it's still considered only through 10 and 6.
How do I answer this without losing funding?
In May, they'll forget by then.
No, it's whatever specifies 10 to 6. Whatever in the bylaw specifies 10 to 6.
Okay.
Paula Bertram, 312 Townsend Harbor Road. I appreciate the chief bringing this forward, and I think it is an issue that we may need to look at as a community. However, I do believe that this bylaw is too prohibitive, and I think it may negatively impact private uses that exist today. I'm also very concerned about the penalty phase, as was talked to by a previous speaker. You know, Article 6, Section B says that any person who violates any provision of this bylaw, if convicted, shall be guilty of a misdemeanor. But I'm not sure what convicted means. because it talks about in a manner, it shall be prosecuted in a manner provided in bylaw sections 1-2 and 1-3. I don't have those in front of me, so I don't know what they are. One of my questions is, what is the penalty phase and the enforcement phase? If an officer comes to your home and says you're guilty of this bylaw and issues a ticket, does that mean you are convicted? What is the appeal process? What is the, to be convicted of a misdemeanor is a pretty serious offense, so I'm very concerned about that. It appears to me that there should be an incremental penalty rather than stating they shall be convicted of a misdemeanor. I think this bylaw warrants more discussion, and I would agree with the motion that we table this and continue it to a further date.
Can you address the questions that she had, Counsel?
Through you, Mr. Moderator. So I think the question that was asked is in Section 6, entitled Enforcement and Penalties, subsection B, it states that any person who violates any provision of this bylaw, if convicted, shall be guilty of a misdemeanor and shall be prosecuted in a manner provided in bylaw sections 1-2 and 1-3 with an applicable fine of $300 per offense. Sections 1-1 and 1-2 are both in the section of your general bylaws entitled Enforcement and Penalties. Section 1-1 simply says that any police officer of the town has the authority to prosecute offenses. Section 1-2 is just standard language that mimics the criminal complaint process at the state level. So it says, quote, whoever violates any provision of these bylaws may be penalized by complaint brought in the district or housing court, period, except as may be otherwise provided by law, and as the district court or housing court may see fit to impose, comma, the maximum penalty for each violation or offense brought in such manner shall be $300. So it's a criminal complaint process, Mr. Moderator.
So, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Moderator.
Hold on.
Mr. Moderator.
Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
It also refers to Section 1-3, which is non-criminal disposition. So you have the option to go similar to the dog bylaw, and it was difficult to enforce that through criminal, and so we added the bylaws to provide for non-criminal disposition, and that's what 1-3 refers to.
What, Mr. Moderator, you're referring to...
I've lost control of the meeting. I'm coming back to you. Go ahead, Chief.
Referring to Chapter 40, Section 21D? Well, that's, if you get a ticket, and it's subject to appeal, so you can appeal it to a clerk, and then a clerk would hear the facts. So that's what makes it a little more...
A clerk in a civil court?
Clerk in a civil court would hear the facts first and decide if there was probable cause to issue a complaint. In a criminal court, I'm sorry, criminal court.
Criminal court, right?
Criminal court.
Mr. Moderator, that actually increases my anxiety about this bylaw. To be in your home and have, an event and you are unknown that you've increased, you're beyond the noise limit, the potential is there to find yourself in a civil matter with a misdemeanor on your record. I think this bylaw goes too far, and I think that we need to, as a community, understand it. I think that we need to talk about it more. I think we do need examples of what those noises are. I think the point about ambient noise being different in different areas of town is very relevant, because what may be ambient in one section of town is not ambient in another. I think it leaves too much open to judgment calls, and I'm not sure how I would do this, but I would make a motion that we pass over this article at this time.
All right, well, we have one motion, one amendment already on. You've got a motion to pass over, so we're going to try to take them in sequential order. Thank you. Okay, go right ahead. You can come on.
Mr. Moderator, can I just respond to that last?
You can in a minute. Okay, just make a note and remember it. I want to get to some of these people that are in line also, Chief. Go right ahead. Tell us who you are.
Yes, I've been a farmer in Lunenburg for 36 years.
And you have to give us your name and where you live.
Donna Jacobson on 189 Howard Street in Lunenburg.
Thank you.
And we have a farm, and there is noise from the farm, and they've given me tickets, and I'm just afraid that this noise control law is going to destroy the farm.
What she did. Sir.
Tom Alonzo, 284 Lancaster Avenue. I have a question first for the chief and then some comments about the bylaw. I'd like to know, do you know quantitatively how many noise complaints you received last year?
No.
Could you roughly estimate?
No, I didn't.
Okay. I'm just concerned about the start of why we're doing this to begin with. So I will echo what some of the previous speakers said. I'm concerned that, number one, there's no duration of the event that is listed here. Somebody else said that. I'm concerned about the quantitative part of this. Does that mean the police department has acoustic measuring equipment? Because if you're going to go and potentially appeal this, it would be nice to know what the level is and what it was recorded at and what instruments it was recorded as. I think there's a lot of things that really are not defined enough and and really are too broad. So to someone else who wanted to table this, I would echo that. I know it's been seconded already. I think it should be tabled until some of those can be had into a full meeting at some other time where the townspeople could really weigh in on the specifics of this, could be weighed. Thank you.
Sir.
Dave Proctor, 733 West Street. Just for clarification, maybe someone can clarify this for you. Ambient noise, that's the current background noise. So I have a family of 4. It's going to be different at 5 o'clock in the afternoon for me than it is at 11 o'clock. So at 11 o'clock, 10 decibels above that noise level, that typical noise level, right? So if I'm very close to my neighbors, if all 3 of us have our generators going, because we tend to all lose power at the same time, that then becomes the new ambient noise, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Just thank you.
Derek Matson, 4 Windermere Drive.
Yeah, we get these, whoever sets the microphone must be 5'2". They all need to be higher.
It's all right. I too want to thank the chief for the hard work that went into this. I know it's not easy to put something like this together. You can't please all the time. One thing I do know is that this was not something the town of Lunenburg, the chief and his group put together on their own. This is very similar laws in surrounding communities, and we use those as stepping stones to put this together. I've heard a lot of people talking about what is ambient noise, what is the decibel level, and what are the examples and what's it going to be used for. Well, as a resident of 17 years, I've never filed a noise complaint once until about 1.5 years ago. I've got a next door neighbor, their kid plays drums, he's got a quad. His dad has a Harley Davidson motorcycle, really loud. And when it's nice in the summertime and he goes to work at 5 o'clock, we listen to it. And we don't complain. I feel strongly that the purpose of this is not to go on a bylaw ticket campaign and go after everybody for noise. The purpose of this is a vehicle in which to control the noise and noise pollution. A previous speaker spoke of having events earlier on or a couple of years ago, and I for one would have never thought about doing anything like this until my house shook and I heard noise through closed doors and windows for 4 days straight. We couldn't do anything without the walls vibrating and without hearing the noise. So we're interested in this not for telling somebody their air conditioner is too loud or that their car is running in the driveway or their generators. We've all got the generators running, right? But it's a way to just control it and to keep the noise pollution from becoming out of control. We had no way to do anything without this. So we're just trying to make it fair for everybody that when you're in a residential community, you shouldn't be subject to these crazy loud noises that literally shake your house for 4 days straight. So nothing's perfect, everything's subjective. I think we live in a great town where things will be enforced subjectively and fairly. I think this is just going to keep things at a reasonable limit for everybody.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so we had a motion to pass over that was seconded. I conferred.
Just one little thing.
One little thing.
One little thing.
Just one little thing.
Because everybody said a lot of things that. My name is Pete Stahl, I live at 31 Chase Road.
Except we don't know who you are yet.
Well, I said that. Peter Stahl, I live at 31 Chase Road. The only thing that I have, because a lot of the other issues, I have the same concerns, so I don't want to repeat all that stuff, just that I feel the same way. The only thing I asked the chief is, do we have a calibrated device right now at the police department that we can actually make a measurement, and we're going to have to acquire that device and maintain its calibration?
I'm not really that much of a gambling man that this article would get passed, so I haven't bought any decibel meters yet. But I planned on it.
I think
Should it
think
pass?
that in that regard, it's something, you know, for an industrial application or commercial, you could probably catch the person. I think a motorcycle ripping out of the driveway is almost impossible to enforce it. But there is another, you could obviously probably cite the driver of the motorcycle for having improper equipment and excessively loud exhaust.
That's a whole different law.
A different route to go, I suppose. So I mean, that's just my only issue is how are you going to actually enforce it? I mean, you're going to have to get that piece of equipment. You're going to have to spend some time running around.
That's not a big deal.
All right. So.
Thank you.
In fact, you can get it on your phone if you want it. It's an app.
Oh, there is? Well, thanks.
Okay, so we had a motion. Uh-oh, one more. Go ahead, one little thing.
On the Lockwood 91 Main Street. One thing that I didn't hear anybody talking about is the restrictions on commercial business. So, for example, we have a Dunkin' Donuts that's open 24 hours, and they can't get a delivery overnight. And there are a couple more restrictions on business. And I don't like the idea that whenever someone wants to do a business in town, they need to go, you know, looking through all our bylaws to figure out what permit they need, what permit they don't. And it doesn't have an exception for being in a commercial district or so forth. So I do think on the commercial side, I don't think this bylaw is very helpful. Even trash pickup, places that have a lot of foot traffic, the trash pickup is overnight, and you'd want that, the business would want that. So prohibiting that is not helpful to the business. You know, just because you don't want to go have big trash can truck coming when you have people there. And then we are asking the business to figure out that they need a permit to have that done. And if the enforcement is criminal, how are we going to enforce that on a business? So that's another thought that I had regarding the business side. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. So I conferred with the voter who wanted to amend the article, and that was seconded. And I also had a motion to pass over, which was also seconded. In conferring with the voter who wanted to amend the article, she would consent to have the motion to pass over heard first, because that obviously would make the amendment moot. So I think first we're going to vote on whether or not we should pass over the article. That would be a majority vote. So I don't see anybody else at the microphone, so I think we're ready to vote. All those in favor of passing over this article, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. More than a majority, the article is passed over at this time. So we are on Article 10. Ms. Adams.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to amend the Code of Lunenburg, Chapter 12, entitled Americans with Disabilities Committee, dated October 22nd, 2018, as shown on the orange handout, with additions to the bylaw underlined and deletion stricken through.
Thank you. Is there a second? You're going to make your recommendation after the discussion. Any discussion on Article 10, please?
Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. This actually came up in a side conversation within the last couple of hours in regards to this article, and it got me thinking about the way this thing is worded. The one thing that I think should be changed in it before we vote on this is that if you read the terms for all of the members of this committee as it's spelled out in this article, you're going to have the three, how are they described, at-large members, I believe.
Tell us specifically what you're looking at, Mr. Passios.
Yeah, it is. Hold on just a second, I got to find it now. I didn't mark it. Oh, you know what? It's not in the article. It's in the There's an information sheet that goes with this, isn't there? Okay, on the front page, under section 12-19, composition and term of appointment. After the underlining in the first few lines, the members of this committee are spelled out. Board of Selectmen designee shall be initially appointed for 1-year term. One shall be the building commissioner, that will be a 3-year term. And then you have 3 at-large members that are going to be appointed for 1 year and then subsequently appointed for 3 years, which means you're going to turn over those 3 positions all at the same time in the same year. First, after 12 months, the second time after 3 years. I think they should be staggered, just like all other committees are. And if that requires an amendment, it's not really spelled out in the article, it's in the description or the breakdown of the change. Is that?
If you want to make an amendment to the article, if you want to make something specific, just let us know what it is, see if it's seconded. We'll vote on it. You should probably write it down.
Yep.
Maybe, Mr. Passios, it simply would be simple enough in your amendment to say.
The whole sheet is the article, okay. Yeah, so it will be an amendment. I'll have to write it up for you, but basically what it will do is create those 3 at-large positions appointed for 1, 2, and 3 years initially. That way they will stagger renewals over a 3-year period.
Second. So write that down, Mr. Passios. Thank you. Do you need a pen? I have one.
Just didn't have the form.
Okay. So you understand what Mr. Passios is recommending. Sir.
Hi, Jim Levesque, 33 Lancaster Avenue. If I'm not mistaken when I'm reading this, it says that the Board of Selectmen shall be initially appointed for a 1-year term, the building commissioner for a 3-year term, and 3 at-large members for a 2-year term. Is the question that Mr. Passios has to have the 2-year terms staggered? So we have representatives of 1, 2, and 3-year terms here.
Who can answer that question for the voter?
What Mr. Passios is talking about doing is that if you don't change it to the 1, 2, and 3-year terms, after the initial 2-year term for these 3 large members, all those 3 have to be replaced every 3 years. With this change, you'd have 2 people changed after the first year. You would have 1 person after 2 years, and you'd have 2 people after 3 years. And then every year it's going to be 2, 1, 2.
All right.
That's a more even way of doing it instead of.
All right, just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
So we've got the amendment and we've got the article. Please. You have to tell us who you are, even though you're sitting in the middle.
My name's Terry Birchfield. I live at 118 White Street. And actually, I was just going to suggest that if the amendment reads changing it from 1 to staggered, it really should read changing it from 2 to staggered, because in the description it talks about 2 years. The one has a strike through. I guess that's the.
Yeah, to tell you the truth, I thought the 2 was a strike through also, and I was assuming it was a 1 year. Looking at it quickly, it almost looks like the strike through goes through it because there's a line after the 2. I'm sorry. You'd have to specifically state those staggered. What's that? Yeah, with the period of time, right. Okay.
All right, Mr. Passios, say it, Mr. Passios, come back. Say it verbally so that we have it on record. You are on TV. And then we'll know exactly what you said. Then write it down. I think people seem to be understanding what you're talking about, okay? And then we can vote on the amendment. So just say it verbally first.
Starting in the middle of the paragraph where it says 3 at-large members initially appointed, 4 from that point forward, staggered appointments of 1, 2, and 3 years initially.
And that was seconded. Somebody? Thank you. Okay. So on the amendment, which would be a majority vote, all those in favor of Mr. Passios' amendment, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Okay, so we got the amendment down. Nobody else at the microphone. Selectman, your recommendation. Oh, sorry. I thought it was everybody. Are there any nays? It's unanimous. You may, but you're also caucusing over there. But go ahead.
I move that we recommend approval of this article as amended.
Second. My only question is, there's a representative of the Board of Selectmen and the building commissioner. How do they play into that?
My assumption is because they're appointed, well, the selectman representative, because it's appointed by the selectmen, would be done annually when they do their organization.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a valid assumption, but that's what I would assume.
Yeah, that would make sense. What about the building commissioner? He's appointed for a 3-year term.
The building inspector would automatically, usually we appoint the people that are named in there, but it's sort of automatically by the fact that they hold the position, they'll be on it.
Mm-hmm. So they're just, their term is unlimited?
No,
as long as they're the commissioner?
No, it's still a 3-year term in here.
They would get reappointed every 3 years.
Okay. And so it's essentially the 3 at-large members will be staggered.
That's right. Eventually, everybody's going to have a 3-year term.
Except for the BOS.
No, it's initially 1 year, and then after the first year, it becomes 3 years, because later on it says, after the initial term, all members shall serve 3-year terms. Just before Section 2.
Okay.
Okay, for the selectmen, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Selectmen recommend approval.
Thank you. Finance?
Finance Committee finds no direct financial effect.
Okay. Declare that we're ready to vote on this article. Excuse me. We vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
That passes. Any nay? Any nay? No nay. And on the article itself, I think I already did that. On the article itself, all those in favor of the article, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. All right. Article 11, please. And that is Mr. Toll.
I move that the town vote to amend the Code of Lunenburg, Chapter 134, entitled Demolition Delay, to modify Section 134-4.d by deleting the number 180 from line 2, i.e. being the length of the demolition delay in days, and inserting the number 540 in its place.
Is there a second?
Second.
And you're going to make your recommendation after discussion?
Correct.
Now that they put the microphone up high, you've got to put it down.
Comes the short person. Rebecca Lantry, 251 West Street, Lunenburg Historical Commission Chairperson. The Lunenburg Historical Commission is requesting to amend the demolition delay bylaw by deleting the number 180 from line 2, i.e. being the length of demolition in days, and inserting the number 540 in its place, or to take any action there relative thereto. In plain speak, this speaks to the demolition delay. This changes the demolition delay from 6 months to 18 months. We, the commission, has found that 6 months are no deterrent to demolition of buildings that the Historic Commission has determined to be significant, nor is it long enough for any plan of action to move the building or to find an alternative to destruction. Mass Historical Commission came forth with language for a model demolition delay bylaw and recommended the time of delay be extended to 18 months. We have lost close to 20 houses ranging in age from 1630s to the 1800s. We have a 1755 house on delay now. We are losing our town's history, our nation's history, when the houses that were the homes of the Revolutionary War participants are going down. We need help. Please give us the tools to save these houses from destruction.
Stay right there, Ms. Lantry, because people may have questions for you.
Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. Anybody that's watched the selectmen's meetings recently have heard me speak on this matter. I am adamantly against increasing it to a year and a half. I ran up against this issue with the article that I brought forward last year. Lots of promises were made that with that building that was in question that, you know, funds were available and there was going to be looked into, and here we are 6 months later, and nothing's moved forward with that. Also, at the board meetings, I've also stated that last May I came across a YouTube video, and it was a debate somewhere around the 128 belt, I believe. It was outside of Boston, but not out this far to Lunenburg. And it was a selectmen's board race, and the incumbent was asked outright by the moderator. Actually, it was a question from one of the other candidates to the incumbent, asking why the redevelopment of a certain area that's town or city has dragged on for so long. And his very direct answer, without even having to think about it, was that our hands have been tied by all of the regulations for historical, architectural, and other controls that have tied their hands and not allowed them to move forward with redevelopment of that particular part of the town or city they were talking about. I see that happening here. Waiting 18 months is not going to make that big a difference. If you can't do it in 6 months, you're not going to make a big change in 18 months. I'm adamantly against increasing this.
Thank you. Sir?
Greg Roy, 105 Chestnut Street. Just a quick question through you, Mr. Moderator. I'm not sure who's appropriate to answer it. Could someone enlighten us which structures in town specifically would be protected under this? What's the threshold for which buildings would be protected? I probably should have an understanding of what the bylaw says, but I don't. If there's a definition of what protected structures are, that would be helpful.
I think Ms. Lantry can give you that answer.
A significant building means the building has been listed on the National or State Register of Historic Places, and it also includes on the local Registry of Historic Places are currently or previously submitted in an inventory prepared by the Historical Commission. C, it's importantly associated with one or more historic persons or event, or with broad architectural, cultural, political, economic, or social history of the town of Lunenburg or the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It's historically or architecturally important in terms of period, style, or method of building, and most relevantly, it has to be over 75 years of age.
Seeing no one else at the...
No.
Whoops. Here we
Mr.
go.
Moderator.
I was wondering what was taking so long. Sir.
Dave Rogers, 82 Highland Street. On Holman Street, we had the cemetery building, where it used to hold a garage, implements for the cemetery and vehicles, and it was old, it was decrepit, and it was falling down. That would be a perfect example of waiting for a year and a half before you were able to tear it down and build a new facility. Now, let me carry it one step further. If there was a piece of property with a house on it, and it fell into this broad range of requirements, if it was 80 years old and nobody had lived in it for 3 years and it was on a parcel of 8 acres and it was going to be subdivided and the folks that bought the land wanted to tear down that building, they'd have to wait for a year and a half if it was 75 or under. 80, no. I just don't understand this. A year and a half. What happened to the rights of individuals that own these properties? I think it's ludicrous to wait for a year and a half to do this. And I hope that everybody votes this down. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Troy Daniels, 94 Main Street. I hate to be redundant to Mr. Rogers, but I'm going to do it anyway. I think that we need to understand that this is not talking about just tearing down houses, but this is also talking about remodeling. And in the case of my house, we would have had to wait a year and a half in order to remodel a garage that was a barn structure attached to our home. And I think that that's unreasonable to ask anyone to wait a year and a half for something like that.
Mr. Moderator, I actually have a
And
question.
and your name again.
Paula Bertram, 312 Townsend Harbor Road. I actually have a question relative to the last two speakers. And the question is my understanding this is strictly relative to demolition of a structure. And secondly, my understanding, further understanding, is that the commission can act prior to that 18 months. So if a structure is deemed not architecturally or historically worthy, the commission could decide and approve a demolition well in advance of 18 months. You're not required to wait that 18 months. However, if it is determined to be historically significant, then you may have to wait the 18 months. Am I correct in that understanding?
You are correct. And as a point of reference, the cemetery building did come before the Historical Commission for a demolition delay, and it was approved that they may demo that building. We asked them to make some considerations to possibly trying to sell it, but if they could not, they were free to demo it. We have done that to several other buildings that are not structurally sound, no matter how significant they have been. They have gone down because they are not structural. They are not able to do that. And it has nothing to do with renovating a piece of your property. We would love to see renovation of anybody's property. You only have to come before if you want to demo the property to the ground.
Sir.
Jim Levesque, 33 Lancaster Avenue. I'm also the vice chair of the Architectural Preservation District Commission. We did discuss this at our last meeting. We chose not to take a position on this because it did not impact the properties within the Architectural Preservation District itself. This is for outside of the district, just in case there's any confusion.
Thank you.
Paula Bertram, 312 Townsend Harbor Road again. I'm actually going to take the other side of the argument, and that is I don't have a historical structure. I always wish that I did, but my husband is adamant that we will never have a historical structure. But history is what makes us who we are. And when we look at our community and we look at our town center and we drive down our scenic roads, we look at those old houses. And when I look at the tablets in the town hall, it makes me remember those who came before us. And when you destroy a historical building and you put something new in its place, you've destroyed the fabric of what made us who we are. And I truly believe that that's worth saving. You know, I actually yesterday took my grandchildren to Plymouth Plantation, and we toured Plymouth, and then we went to some of the old historic mansions. That is our New England history, and we're part of that. And once it goes away, you can't just put it back. Yeah, you can put a picture up, but it's not the same thing. So personally, I think our history is worth saving. And I would agree that 6 months is not too short. However, I can also see the viewpoint that a year and a half is too long. And so the question that I would have is, what is a reasonable window? Is an 8-month or a year, does that give you time to do the work that you need to, or do you absolutely have to have that 18 months?
To the question, it could be moderated to a year if that was the will of the people. It was just the recommendation from the Mass Historic that said that 18 months was a better time frame for them to be able to get stuff done.
Thank you. I can sense it coming, but this gentleman first.
Hi, Eric Smith, 27 Hillside Drive. My family and myself are recently new residents to Lunenburg. We've been here for about 3 years, and one of the things that drew us to this area was the quaintness of it. We moved from a very busy area out here to kind of have a more quiet, simpler way of life, and it has provided that. One of the previous speakers made mention to, if you buy a property that has a historic structure on it and you have an 8-acre parcel and you want to subdivide, I would argue that these houses are far and few between that can be saved. I agree that history is immensely important for the children, for us, just to take those times to look back and say, this is what it used to be like. I believe that's very important. I don't think a year and a half, if you're making that type of investment, these investors and these property people that do this, they know what they're getting into. The community, our children deserve the right to have these historic structures, as well as people have the right to earn money, subdivide property. It's a little bit of extra time, and a year, as we all know as we age, goes in the blink of an eye. Thank you.
Welcome to town, and we have a talent bank form available online at the town manager's office for people that want to get involved, and we'd love to have more people get involved. Go ahead, Mr. McQuaid.
Just a clarifying point, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but all homes over 75 years old automatically have to go before the Historic Commission to get a determination of whether they fall into the historically valuable category. But just to put that in perspective, that's 1943. Every year that moves up a year. So fairly soon, most of the houses in town are at least going to have to go before the Historic Commission, and it'll be up to them to say whether this applies to them or not. So what's historical is a moving target, and this bylaw as it's written affects more people and will affect more people than I think a lot of people comprehend.
Thank you. Sir.
Tom Alonso, 284 Lancaster Avenue. I just want to bring up two events. First of all, I am in support of the change from 180 to 540 for two reasons. One of them, when this delay was put in with the old Whalen Park, and we tried, I was on the board at the time, the Historical Commission tried very hard, that there was a lot of history to save there, and all they had to do was run out the clock for 6 months. For that development, it was a yawn. It was a yawn to run out the clock for 6 months. You can't even get marketing stuff in the right people's hands to look at investing money to move some of the buildings, some of the properties in 6 months. So you can easily run that out. Second time that happened, it wasn't under the delay bylaw, but it might have been, and that was Jones House, which the Board of Selectmen put out to bid to get somebody to buy it so they would save it. And it took us over a year to get the right person. That right person or that right family came in and did what they did with Jones House, which is beautiful, restored, and we saved a piece of history, but that took a lot longer than 6 months. So there were people at the time saying we should demo it. I'm for the people who say we shouldn't. We should take the year and a half to try to get things sold, get the market in front of the right people who would try to save or move these buildings, because once they're down, there's no saving them beyond that. So a year and a half is not too much to ask.
Thank you. Mr. Passios, there's somebody behind you that didn't speak yet, so let him go first, and then you can get right back in line. Same with you, Mr. Daniels. Go ahead, sir.
Jim Reese, 206 Leominster Road. I took down a house a few years ago, and it was under 75 years old. And the building commissioner at the time ruled it because a significant person may have lived there or may have had significant architecture. I did have to go before the commission. And they treated us very well. We went really fast. It wasn't a building we had to put a delay on. However, I have a real problem when we take somebody's property and take control of it and tell them what they can and cannot do with their property. I'd like to add an amendment to the end of the bylaw that says no property tax will be assessed on property in delay due to this bylaw.
Write it down, sir. You did? On the appropriate form? No. Anyways, I got it. Okay. But I didn't hear a second.
Second.
Okay. And I'm not sure whether that'll be within the scope of the article, but I'm thinking on it, so just hold on to it for the moment. Sir. Go ahead.
Well, I'm hoping you're going to entertain this motion. Mr. Moderator, I move that we postpone this article until the annual town meeting, May 2020. That will give us 18 months to have public hearings and study this and have the voters on board or not.
Second.
Thank you.
All right, so let me hear what you said again, because
I said second,
the
but,
laughter was hard for me to get through.
I had a
You're
couple of-
moving that this article be postponed.
I seconded Mr. Passio's motion.
Hold on. Me first. You're moving that the article be on the warrant in 2020.
Postponed until annual town meeting 2020. It's a postponement with a definite date rather than indefinitely.
That's a new one on me, Mr. Passios. I'm going to consult
It's
with
just
counsel.
got a little different twist to the one we had a year ago.
But he can ask that it be on in 2020. Won't be in binding. So town council believes that, and it makes sense to me, so the ruling would be that you can make the motion, and it can be seconded, and that can be the vote, but it may not be binding if somebody puts it on the warrant sooner, or later, or doesn't put it on the warrant.
But it does postpone it from this one.
It could be postponed from this meeting, that's correct. So your motion was made and seconded, and we'll get to that. I'm going to call on Mr. Daniels.
Yes, Troy Daniels, 94 Main Street. I would also ask that people consider the financial impact of people who own historic homes. And whenever they go to a bank and they apply for a loan, and that they have to wait 18 months before they could even submit a plan that might be approved, may or may not be approved. And there's also, there was a comment about Plymouth Plantation being brought up. And that's great, but Plymouth Plantation's a complete fabrication. It's not historic at all. It's a recreation of something that it existed in the past. And I also agree that there are certain rights, but I believe that the rights of the people who own the homes outweigh the rights of the children who might drive by them or see them on their way to and from school.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, Paula Bertram, 312 Townsend Harbor Road. I just want to comment relative to my comments regarding Plymouth Plantation. My point was that history is important to all of us. Whenever I travel, and I travel significantly, one of the things that we do is tour the historic homes, not fabrications, but actual historic homes for wherever we are. Because it's interesting to me, history has always been interesting to me, and you can't go back and recreate it. So when I talked about the homes in Plymouth, I'm not talking about the plantation itself, although I did go there with my children, and they were my grandchildren, they were absolutely fascinated. But we also walked down the streets and looked at some of the old homes and read all the placards and looked at those historic structures that if they were not protected, they could potentially be gone. And my grandchildren would never have had the opportunity to see them and experience them.
Rebecca Lantry, 251 West Street. Just point of clarification, the 1755 house was sold to a developer who is looking to put on a multifamily development. Okay? So you want to give him a tax break? It's fine by me. You want to do that? That's fine. But 1755 will never come back. That's where it's at.
Robert Bowen, 1686 Massachusetts Avenue, but more importantly, an owner of 50 Main Street in Lunenburg, which is a National Register of Historic Places old church. With the ownership of private property, older houses, there are rights and there are responsibilities. I feel like as an owner of a historic property, I'm in part a custodian of it. And I realize it's burdensome, but I'm in full support of the change from 180 to 540.
Thank you.
Marie Birchfield, and I live at 1 Rose Garden Lane in the old Wheelam Park
What's
section.
your relationship to Terry?
I'm her proud mother.
There you go.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. My comment is I am forever grateful to the people who decided to build Emerald Place. I have a lovely home in a well-manicured area of town. I love this town. I've been here for 3 years. I feel safe. I feel welcomed. You have the greatest senior center on the planet, and I've seen many at my age. I know. But my comment is only, all of us have to grow, and all of us have to make changes. And if Emerald Place wasn't here, I couldn't have been here in Lunenburg. But my daughter and my family feel very comfortable that I am in a well-cared-for place. I have a garage. That's her big thing. But thank you, Lunenburg, for letting Lunenburg grow.
Sir.
Ryan LeBlanc, 67 Malpas Road. I move the question.
Okay. The question has been moved and seconded. Okay, but we have the amendment, the motion that we have to address first. So if that's what you're moving, we have to address Mr. Passios's motion to have this on postponed until May, the first Saturday in May in 2020. Correct? Correct. Okay? So we're going to, if there's a debate on that, I hope not. All in favor of Mr. Do you need to speak on that? You already spoke on it.
Point of order.
No.
According to Robert's rules, if a motion on the floor, it has to be acted on by the body.
Right, the motion that's on the...
You don't have the right to do that under Robert's rules.
Okay, stand up and address it with me, please.
Motion on the floor, I made it to close debate. The body decides whether anybody else speaks by voting on my motion.
Okay, and I decide whether or not we're going to move the question, and that's the moderator and town meeting.
Decide that under Robert's rules.
Okay, but we don't follow Robert.
There is no debate on a motion to close debate.
That is
It's a
correct.
vote.
You're absolutely correct. Town meeting, though, town meeting time, which we follow, allows the moderator to decide whether or not it is time and can rule that out of order. And for that reason, I'm going to take the motion, which Mr. Passios made, now, and then we'll move the question. And I'll show you that where it shows it in the book, if I can find it that quickly. So on Mr. Passios' motion to postpone this until the first Saturday in May, the annual town meeting in 2020, all in favor, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. That is defeated. Now we're ready for the article. Okay, one person doubted it. How many people doubt on that amendment? Well, you got to stand so I can count. Sorry. Okay, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, sorry, 7. Okay, we'll hand count. I designated counters. Don't forget, if you're over on this side, you need to count the Finance Committee and the stage, okay? And don't forget to count the people way up in the back, which would include the chief of the fire department, who always takes the highest because he thinks that's the place where fire can't get. So don't forget to do your counts. 7. They were struggling to get 7.
So if this fails, and you see the motion, you have another amendment on the floor to waive the property tax during the term of the extension.
Right.
So you commented on whether that's what you scope, that's a decision for you to make, unless you defer to me, we can talk about it.
What do you think?
Well, the bigger question is that a legal mechanism? I'm not sure that under state tax law, there's no statute that authorizes a waiver of tax by a local municipality by way of a bylaw.
Thank you for mentioning that, though, because I forgot.
I think it can probably be within the scope.
come to a microphone and announce which side and your count. This is all the people, oh, I'm sorry. I got interrupted. Okay, all those in favor of the amendment, not the article, the amendment to postpone it to 2020. Raise your cards and be counted. Sorry. On the amendment. Oh, the guy with the beard is Jim. The guy with the beard is Jim Vogt. The lady in orange is Cheryl Lezier. All those in favor on my left, your right.
We have 21, Mr. Moderator.
21. You can put your card down. Now come up. So, and you're counting which?
Center.
You're counting the center. How many in favor on the center?
15.
15. 1-5, right? Okay. Finance Committee, put your cards back up. The whole side, all the way up and down. Make sure we got everybody, okay? No, not the middle. You guys are all set. Just the people on my right, regardless of their color of their card. On this side.
13. 13.
1-3.
1-3.
13. Okay. Now, all those against the amendment, please raise your cards, and the counters will come back. And you don't think it was a majority, Mr. Rogers? Mm-hmm. On my left, your right.
We have 30, Mr. Moderator.
30 on this side. Mr. Vogt on that side?
32.
32. And in the middle?
50.
5-0. 5-0 in the middle. Yeah. 49 yes, 112 no. The amendment is defeated. Now, there was another motion and seconded that, and I've forgotten who made it, might have been Mr. Passios, to waive the real estate tax during the demolition phase.
Mr. Moderator?
Hold on. Who made that motion? Oh, yeah, here it is. I've got it. This is what it said, and it was seconded. No property tax will be assessed on property in delay due to this bylaw, correct? Okay.
Mr. Moderator, point of
that was
order.
seconded. Point of order I'm going to get to, but I'm going to call on council first to see if this is something that we can do by law, okay? So go ahead, council.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So I think a couple of questions were raised. The first was whether that amendment is within the scope of the article as published, and my opinion is that it is within the scope.
I have no problem with it being within the scope, sir.
I have a concern with the legality of a property tax exemption not authorized by statute being affected by way of a bylaw. I'm aware of no legal authority for that to occur. I'm not saying that if it was the moderator's choice, the motion could not proceed, but I have questions about whether that condition would ultimately survive a review by the Attorney General's office. And just so you're aware and the public is aware of what that means is if the motion proceeds and the article is amended and ultimately a 540-day demo delay is adopted subject to a waiver of tax and that goes to the Attorney General, there's a possibility that the Attorney General would allow the 540-day increase to occur, but not the accompanying condition that would waive tax. So you might end up with 540, but still no waiver of tax. I'm just giving that warning. I don't know what the Attorney General will do, but again, I'm not aware of any statutory authority for the town to proceed in this manner.
Mr. Moderator?
You can't just talk to me. You got to come up to a microphone, who's ever speaking.
Perry Jewell, 20 Sunset Lane. I would just ask, through you, Mr. Moderator, to the council, might it be possible for the town or for the Historical Society to reimburse the owner of the property for the property taxes?
Mr. Ebersol.
So my question is, to clarify what the intent is, there would be no taxes during the time period of the delay? Is that what is in the wording?
It says no property tax will be assessed on property in delay due to this bylaw.
In delay.
No property tax will be assessed on property in delay due to this bylaw.
Okay.
That's the amendment, correct? Come
Yeah,
down and speak if you need to address it, okay? That'll get you for sitting all the way up there. You make amendments, you got to come up to let him speak first. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's the intent.
Tell your name again.
Jim Reese, 206 Leominster Road. That's the intent that, well, we're taking control of somebody's property, we're not assessing them property tax. It could be a young couple that has lead paint in the house. Their kids can't live in the house because they're getting lead poisoning. They have to move out of the house. They could be paying a mortgage and also be paying property tax. If we're going to take control of somebody's property, and I understand the intent of this bylaw, and I'm okay with it, I just have a hard time assessing somebody property tax when they have no control of their property.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Dave Proctor, 733 West. You're using the terminology demolition delay in quotes as though it means something, so I would recommend that you change it to at least demolition delay instead of just delay.
Oh, on the amendment? Due to, okay. And you'd accept that, sir, Mr. Reese, that your amendment would say demolition delay instead of just delay, right? Okay. And the second would accept that as well? Whoever seconded this? Somebody seconded this? Fine. Okay. We're just adding the word demolition delay instead of just saying delay. Okay. I think you know what Mr. Reese is trying to accomplish. Okay. Go ahead. We'll get home before midnight. There was a debate going on in discussing Lunenburg if we would go until tomorrow, but go ahead.
Tom Alonso, 284 Lancaster Avenue. First of all, I would argue the point that the delay takes control of somebody's property. They still have full right to the property with one exception. They can't delay the structure. So I disagree with the whole premise, first of all. Second of all, if you put in a delay and you give them no property tax and they don't demolish it, do you collect the 1.5 year taxes before then and you don't use it as a delay tactic? I mean, and by the way, I still don't think this, as town council said, I don't think there's statutory possibility of offering this. We've tried to get senior property tax relief in this town, and we've been told time and time again, you can't do that. And these are people that probably by lots of other circumstances deserve it, and somebody living in a historic house who wants to demolish it certainly doesn't rise to that same level. So for all those reasons, I would urge people to vote against the amendment.
Okay, I think we're ready to vote. So this is a majority vote on the amendment, not the delay. On the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. The amendment does not carry. Now, we're back to the demolition delay article itself. Any more debate on that? Pardon? Oh, I'm sorry. We did move. I apologize. You know, sometimes I don't get to have dinner before I come, and then my energy level has gone right down by 9 o'clock at night. So he moved the question. You're absolutely right. Thank you very much. Question was moved. That's not debatable. It's a 2/3 vote. So all those in favor of the article as written and not amended, all those in favor of closing debate. All those in favor, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. So we've moved the question. The question is now before you. It's Article 11 as written. Do we have a recommendation from the Select Board? We'd like one.
For discussion purposes, I'd move that we recommend approval.
I would second.
Is there any discussion?
I feel that 18 months is just too long and too much of a hardship on the homeowner, especially since it applies to the entire town, not just the historic district in the center. So I would vote against this.
I agree with Mr. McQuaid's point that the inventory that will be affected by this will increase dramatically as the years go on, so I am planning to vote opposed as well.
At the risk of domestic discord in my house, I will be voting in support of this article.
I'll be voting against it. Again, 18 months is a long time. It prohibits people who want to do good things to the town to act on them, and I think that will deter people.
Among the selectmen, all those in favor of recommending approval, Mrs. Adams?
Aye.
Mrs. Luck?
Nay.
Mr. McQuaid?
Nay.
Mr. Ebersol?
Aye.
And I, a nay for myself, so it's 3-2 nay.
3-2 nay. FinCom.
Actually, I'd like to poll to see whether we find that there's a direct financial effect, while we know that there would be on the potential owner of the property, looking at the town budget, and not having any information about current development requests. My position is that I'm not going to find a direct financial impact or effect on the town budget. Mark? No impact? Hannah?
I guess no impact. I don't know right now.
Okay.
No
Michelle?
impact.
No impact?
No direct effect.
Okay, so the Finance Committee finds no direct financial impact.
Okay. Before we vote, Mr. Passios, one more time. No, we already voted to close debate. Sorry. It's been a long night already. But I know you'll all correct me. Why was he standing at the microphone then? Okay. All those in favor of Article 11, please signify by saying aye. Aye. I didn't hear you. Somebody. Oh. Come on. Can you hear me now? Whoa. Okay. Article 11. All those in favor of Article 11. No amendments. As proposed. Please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. I believe we're going to count, but I'm going to say it was defeated, because somebody has to say it one way or the other. 7 people stand. We're going to count. Get the counters down here, please. All those in favor, please put your card up. Counters, be ready. All those in favor of the article, hold your card up. Don't forget to count up on the stage. Keep your cards up. Those in favor. On my right.
25.
25. On my left.
26.
26.
40.
40 in the middle, 40? Okay. All right, all those opposed, please put your cards up. On my right, opposed.
25.
25. In the middle, opposed.
22.
22. Everybody on my left, opposed, cards up. On my left,
25, Mr. Moderator.
25. I think it passes. 91 yes, 72 no, it passes. Wrong again, Mr. Rogers. We're on Article 12, zoning amendments.
Mr.
Mr.
Moderator?
Ebersol.
I move that the town amend the Code of Lunenburg to modify subsection 250-8.3-C1 by inserting a reference to General Law, Chapter 40A, subsection 9, by deleting subsection 250-8.3.C.3 and 4 in their entirety, and by renumbering subsection 250-8.3.C5 as 250-8.3.C3, all regarding the Board of Appeals, with additions to the bylaw underlined and deletions stricken through as printed in the special town meeting warrant.
Is there a second? Okay, you're going to make your recommendation after the discussion. You're going to make a presentation, Mr. Burney?
Very brief, because I don't know how long my voice will hold out. So, here in front of you, you have text from the statute, Chapter 48, Section 9, Paragraph 12. So, Section 9, the Planning Board is proposing to add in its entirety to 250.8.3.C1. It is currently excluded from that section, and looking to delete Section 3 and 4 in their entirety. What Section 3 and 4 do, Section 3 sets a 90-day time frame from the receipt of an application for a special permit for any board, specifically the Planning Board and the Zoning Board of Appeals, to act on said application. What this does is it creates an artificial timeline that these boards are required to act within. Currently, the Planning Board specifically acts on many special permits that are complex, require multiple revisions to submitted plans, and what this 90-day clock does is allows for applicants or potential applicants to wait the board out and either seek a denial or look for an approval on a plan that is maybe not exactly what the board feels is in the town's best interest. Personally, I have not seen a timeline like this in a bylaw in any community I've worked in. I've highlighted the relevant portions in red on the slide. Essentially, state law allows for 65 days from the submission of application for the opening of the public hearing, 90 days from the close of hearing for a decision to be made, and within 14 days of that decision being made, the record decision to be recorded with the town clerk. The board, any board, isn't interested in holding processes longer than they need to, constantly having applicants come back, but oftentimes applicants have, again, complicated plans that need multiple sets of revisions that require some time and consideration. Next slide, please. Most specifically, a large issue with this section is Section 4 of 250.8.3. And what that does is it lays out a ambiguous and not clear procedure for claiming a constructive grant. Constructive grant is when the board doesn't act within the prescribed timeframes. You will notice, again, a very lengthy section highlighted in red. This is the statutory procedure, which we do not follow. We follow this procedure, which is one long run-on sentences full of commas and with lack of specificity. So if one were to claim that the board had constructively granted an application, there isn't a clear, definitive understanding of what their path to claiming this grant would be, what the town or the building commissioner's responsibility is on their side. So the planning board is again looking to follow the statute. Chapter 40A is the zoning act. It governs how towns adjudicate and implement zoning, and the board is looking to have that accepted as standard practice as in the majority of communities in our great Commonwealth.
Bennett?
For now.
For now. Mr. Bernie, can you tell us the planning board vote? What was the planning board vote on this article?
It was 4-0 in support.
4-0 in support. Good. Thank you, sir.
Dave Proctor, 733 West Street. Through the moderator, am I okay to comment on this because I am a planning board member?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So we need this because the way it's written right now in our bylaws, in my opinion, it weakens the board. These projects come before us, we vet them on your behalf, and the rushed time frame takes time away from us to do that job for you. So to strengthen your own planning board, I would suggest that you give us the time that we need, and it puts it more in keeping with every other town in Massachusetts. So,
thank you. Sir?
Greg Roy, 105 Chestnut Street. A couple of questions. Maybe I'm not reading something or missing something. But through you, Mr. Moderator, are we striking the 90-day period that the board has to act on a permit after they open the public hearing?
No, currently the way the text reads is from the date of application, they have 90 days with which to make a decision.
From the application?
From the receipt of application.
Okay.
So, as I know you're aware, some folks in the audience may not be, it takes at least 21 days to open a hearing, because once you've received the application, you have to advertise for 7 and 14 days prior to the hearing. That takes approximately a week of lead time. So by the time you hold your first hearing, you're down to 69 days to make a decision. For scheduling purposes, if the board has revisions after the first hearing, most times that's going to be another 30 days before an applicant is back in front of them on a complicated project, because if the board meets every 14 days, they require a 7-day lead time for submission of material for review. Turning around complicated plans in 7 days is fairly unusual, especially in the current climate of how quickly or how busy engineers and architects and surveyors are. So by the time an application has its second hearing, you're more than halfway through this artificial 90-day time frame.
Okay.
They're going to make you walk to the other one.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So are we setting a time limit that I suppose both the planning board and or the zoning board would have to act on a special permit application from the date that they open the public hearing or any other trigger, or are we just waiving the time frame completely?
We're neither setting nor waiving. We're using the statutory time limit, which the timeline of the public hearing is undefined within the statute.
Okay. I think that answers my question. Thank you.
Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. Anybody that was here for the last town meeting, annual town meeting, this is the same article that came up at that town meeting, and it was voted down for that very reason, that it left it open-ended. It extended the time that this process takes. I've been privy to a number of properties that were sent back for revision after revision after revision, and kind of stonewalled until the developer ran out of money and just gave up. And actually, it ended up in litigation. So we've already voted this down once. I have a problem with the same issues coming back to town meeting, or especially special town meeting, and hoping that, well, maybe second time's a charm. I don't disagree that projects are more complex these days, but I think the limits are there for a reason, and one of the biggest reasons is that it keeps the process moving forward. Thank you.
Greg Roy, 105 Chestnut Street, and I forgot one other thing I wanted to, one comment. I don't think that anything, the way it is written, precludes an applicant from agreeing to a time extension for the board's action on a special permit application. So if the planning board, for example, expresses concerns with an application as submitted and does not believe they have enough facts to make a finding, many times it would be in the applicant's best interest to agree to a time extension on that. So that's certainly something that could happen. I just thought I'd mention that as a comment. Thanks.
Thank you.
Dave Proctor, 733 West. It's not that there is no time frame. There is a time frame. It's just that the part in the middle where we're talking to them or negotiating with them or whatever we're doing, we're vetting the project, that piece can be extended beyond the 90 days that it's currently calling for. The 90 days what's happening is getting triggered by the application. When the application comes in, you have 90 days. That's it, period. Now, it's just too easy for anybody to come in and say, oh yeah, in fact, this has happened to us not too long ago, that, you know, oh, get into this battle. Did they extend it? Did they not extend it? Nobody's quite sure. It's not in writing. And the next thing you know, you're in court. So this would give us the time that we need. And then they have 90 days after the closing of the public hearing. The board has 90 days after the close of the public hearing in which to act, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? So there are time limits.
I guess I missed it. Could you show me in either one of these sections that was on the board here, where it states that it's 90 days after close?
If you go back to the previous slide, please. You will see that it says within 65 days, provided the decision of the special permit granting authority shall be made within 90 days following the date of such public hearing.
Okay, that's a little bit ambiguous as not saying close of public hearing, start of public hearing, during public hearing.
That is
I think it leaves
after,
a floating.
following the date of such public hearing. So
But-
when
but
the
you
hearing
have-
is closed, that is following the public hearing. So if a public hearing is continued from one public meeting to another public meeting, it's still the same public hearing that is open.
Okay, so in other words, to my point, the public hearing could be continued a number of times and it pushes this date out. Okay. I still don't agree with it.
Greg Roy, 105 Chestnut Street. It seems to me, I don't have a real issue with this as proposed because I think that as written, 90 days to the planner's point is from the filing of an application is a very quick timeline for a board to act on a special permit. But it seems to me that it might be appropriate if the board is granted 65 days to schedule such a hearing and they are afforded 90 days to issue a decision after the close of the public hearing, that perhaps some time frame for the public hearing process should be established as a reasonable time frame. I might suggest 90 days would be acceptable for that. And again, nothing precludes this process from being mutually extended. I just have a problem, I think, like the previous speaker, sort of granting a carte blanche, no time limit for that middle portion, which is the important part of these applications, that being the actual public hearing process. So I think what I'm asking is, I'd like to make a motion to make an amendment that the article would include language stating that the approval authority, whichever that is, I think it's the planning board and maybe the Board of Appeals under this section, would close the public hearing within 90 days unless otherwise mutually extended. And I can write that down.
Just say it again, sir, so I can, and then you write it. Close the
I'll try.
public hearing.
The special
Planning-
permit granting authority
Right.
would have 90 days to close the public hearing after it's been opened, unless mutually continued by the applicant and the approving authority.
Mr. Moderator, to the
Okay, Mr. Bernie.
To the previous speaker's point, I think what the planning board's hope and intent with this modification is to bring Lunenburg in line with what other communities in Massachusetts are doing, following the governing legislation, the statute that allows them to exercise their powers per the state law and not create a special, unique law here in town that new members to the board, people who come in from out of town to do work, have to figure out when they get here, to go with what the gold standard is within the Commonwealth.
Thank you.
Yeah, this just standardizes things for us.
Just say who you are.
Just asking, please don't handcuff us. That's, you know.
Who are you?
Yes, I know. Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. My feeling basically is that the section has served us well as written. Just because the town of Lunenburg is different than surrounding towns, I don't think should be a deciding factor as to whether we approve this or not. I've got to, again, think that whoever was involved in writing this originally had a reason for doing it the way they did, and it really concerns me that we don't research as to why they were done, and we change them just because we don't follow them these days. Charter Review has done the same thing with many things. Well, we don't do it that way, so we're going to change it. Thank you.
Robert Bowen, 1686 Massachusetts Avenue. As currently written, it has not served the town well. The town has been sued in the past for missing this particular deadline. It seems to me that it makes good sense to conform the town's bylaw with the state law timelines.
Steve Archambault, 662 Page Street. I move the question.
Sure. Okay. So there's a amendment on the floor that we'll vote on first, and then we'll move the question. So did you finish writing it, sir?
Point of order. Was that question, was that second?
Yes. Sir, I forgot. There you are. It's okay. Read it, and then hand it up. Thank you.
Thanks. The special permit granting authority shall have 90 days to close the public hearing after its opening unless mutually extended by the applicant and the board.
Okay. And that was seconded. Okay. So on the amendment, majority vote on an amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Amendment is defeated. Okay, now we're moving the question. So the question is Article number 12, as written. All those in favor, please signal by saying, well, wait a minute, we got to get recommendations from Selectmen and Finance.
I move that the selectmen recommend approval.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Sure. Aye.
Is there any discussion?
Sure. In terms of the, just the notes I wrote down, when you talk about 90 days minus the 7 to 14 days and you're down to maybe 69 days, that might just be 4 to 5 meetings, and that's if there's no holidays in that time. So then you might be down to a situation where one night there's no quorum, so maybe you're talking 3 planning board meetings. So I like to think of it not just in a function of how fast that time can go by, but how little time there is over that time. I guess that's my comment.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Selectmen recommend approval 4-1.
Finance.
Finance Committee finds no direct financial effect.
Thank you. Article 12 is before you. All those in favor of Article 12, this requires 2/3, by the way. All those in favor, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Passes by 2/3. Article 13. Mr. McQuaid.
I move that the town vote to amend the Code of Lunenburg, Chapter 250, entitled Zoning, to modify subsection 250-6.5.E1 by inserting the words, "a home occupation per 250-4.2.4," or, and 250-6.5.F by inserting subsection 250-6.5.F4, both regarding signs, with additions to the bylaw underlined to allow some signs by right in commercial districts as printed in the special town meeting warrant.
Second.
Second. You're going to make your recommendation after the discussion. Is there discussion on Article 13? All right. Selectmen, if you can give us your recommendation. Planning Board, what was your recommendation?
4-0 in favor.
4-0 in favor. Finance, we're going to need your recommendation as well.
I make a motion that the selectmen recommend approval.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Selectmen recommend approval.
Thank you.
Finance Committee finds no direct financial effect.
Okay. Seeing no one at the microphone, we're ready to vote. All those in favor of Article 13, again, requires 2/3. All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. 14, please, Ms. Luck.
I move that the town vote to amend the Code of Lunenburg, Chapter 250, entitled Zoning, to modify subsection 250-2.1 regarding definitions by deleting the definitions for assisted living residence, bed and breakfast or bed and breakfast establishment, car wash, gasoline station, service station, or filling station, hotel, inn, motel, tourist home or lodging house, kennel, office park, professional building, rooming house or boarding house, shopping center, and townhouse, with deletions to the bylaw stricken through as printed in the special town meeting warrant.
Second.
There's a second. Mr. Bernie, you going to tell us about this while the selectmen are thinking about it?
This is a deletion of duplicative definitions with the adoption of the use table at the Springtown meeting. There were a number of defined uses within Section 4.1 of the bylaw that are duplicated in Section 2.1. So this is removing the former definitions as shown in 2.1.
What was the recommendation of the Planning Board?
4-0 in favor.
Thank you. Selectmen, your recommendation.
I make a motion, we recommend approval.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Selectmen recommend approval.
Thank you. Finance?
Finance Committee finds no direct financial effect.
This again requires 2/3. Seeing no one at the microphone, declare we're ready to vote. All those in favor of Article 14, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Number 15, Ms. Adams.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to amend the Code of Lunenburg, Chapter 250, entitled Zoning, to modify subsection 250-4.1.g by inserting the letter Z after SP for single and two-family dwelling uses and also for veterinary hospital use, and deleting Note 3, all regarding permitted and prohibited uses, partly as shown on a document entitled Amendments to the Code of Lunenburg, subsection 250-4.1.g, dated October 17, 2018, with additions to the bylaw underlined and deletions stricken through as printed in part on the yellow handout.
Second.
Thank you. It's seconded. Selectmen, you're going to make your recommendation. Finance, what's your recommendation?
Finance finds no direct financial effect.
Okay. Mr. Bernie, you going to tell us about this?
Sure. Next slide, please. So in developing the warrant in the spring, there were 3 Zs that were dropped from the use table. You will see them here under single and 2-family detached within the Village Center District and veterinary hospital within the Tri-Town Overlay District. And fourthly, there is a note at the end of the table stating that the definitions within section 4.1 control the use of that term. Since we've now deleted the duplicative terms from 2.1 with the previous article, this note is no longer necessary, so that can also be deleted.
Selectman, your recommendation, please.
I move that the selectmen recommend approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Selectmen recommend approval.
Thank you. Planning, I may have asked, but what was your recommendation?
4-0 in favor.
Thank you. Anyone on Article 15? Seeing none, I'll declare we're ready to vote. All those in favor of Article 15, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. 16, marijuana moratorium. Mr. Toll. Okay.
Here we go. I move that the town vote to amend the Code of Lunenburg, Chapter 250, entitled Zoning, to modify Section 250-4.15.c by deleting November 30th, 2018, and inserting May 31, 2019, and Section 250-4.15.d by inserting a comma at the end thereof, followed by the remaining portion shall remain in full force and effect, both regarding the temporary moratorium on the sale and distribution of recreational marijuana, with additions to the bylaw underlined and deletions stricken through as printed in the special town meeting warrant.
Is there a second? Selectman, you're going to hold your recommendation. Finance, your recommendation.
The Finance Committee finds no direct financial effect.
Planning, what was your recommendation?
4-0 in favor.
Thank you. You going to tell us about this, Mr. Bernie?
I would love to.
Thank you.
So,
We're excited.
as you're all aware, May 2017, the town passed the marijuana moratorium. This was in response to the passage of Question 4 in November of 2016. This placed an 18-month moratorium on the location of non-medical marijuana businesses in the town of Lunenburg. On March 9th, 2018, the Cannabis Control Commission released their final regulations on the implementation of the laws of Question 4. The Planning Board at that point began reviewing the regulations, considering how they would propose regulating marijuana within the town of Lunenburg for non-medical uses. In June of that year, 2018, or this year, the Planning Board felt that they wanted to take a bifurcated approach. They wanted to offer citizens of town the opportunity to prohibit or regulate marijuana. In order to do so, the town of Lunenburg has to take a 2-tier approach to prohibition. The town was a yes community by 53% in the referendum of 2016. Therefore, the town needs to pass a bylaw prohibiting the location of non-medical marijuana businesses, as well as pass a ballot initiative. The Planning Board had originally intended to offer those options at this town meeting, using the statewide election as their ballot referendum. The Secretary of State's office does not allow those questions of local initiatives, such as the prohibition of marijuana businesses, on statewide ballots. Therefore, in order for the Planning Board to offer the residents of Lunenburg the opportunity to make the choice of whether they would like prohibition or whether they would accept the regulation, these 2 items need to be taken up in the spring of 2019. If they were to offer if they were to have offered 2 bylaws this evening offering prohibition and regulation, and both had passed, the moratorium would dissolve. The regulation would take precedent until such time as the ballot initiative had taken place. So there'd be a 9-month or so period where, or probably closer to 7 months, where marijuana businesses could theoretically locate in the community, and then the town perhaps would vote in favor of prohibition, and we would already have those businesses underway or operating. The planning board felt that that wasn't necessarily acceptable, that if the town is going to vote for prohibition, having marijuana businesses operating in town prior to the prohibition would be sort of antithetical to that thought. So they're now looking to extend the moratorium into the end of May 2019. They have been having meetings and public discussions about regulations. They've begun developing frameworks of regulations, and we'll have a regulation bylaw on the annual town meeting in May, as well as a prohibition bylaw, and they'll be petitioning the selectmen to place a ballot initiative on the local ballot in May for prohibition.
Anyone at the microphone want to discuss Article 16? Kathy says nobody. Oh, Mr. Baker's up. Go ahead, sir.
My name's John Baker. I reside at 53 Chase Road. As a former member of the police department in this town, and I just wrapped up 28 years in the court system as a bail commissioner. The longer we can push this off, the better, in my opinion. And going forward, I'd hate to see anything like any kind of activity like that in this town. What everybody else wants to do around, fine, their business. But I've seen too much carnage over the years in both my occupations, and I just don't want to do anything. Pass this thing along as far as you can, because I just think it's a bad idea. I don't care what Lemons or Fitchburg or the Moon does about it, but in my opinion, I'd like to see it completely abolished.
Troy Daniels, 94 Main Street. I guess in thinking about that response or that question, is that the intent of the planning board, if I can ask, to just prolong this until there's just prolonging it for the sake of prolonging it? The other question I had was, what criteria or information was used by the Finance Committee to vote that there was no financial impact?
Basically, are you asking whether or not we could anticipate that there would potentially be revenue that would be coming into the town should such a facility open, not having any information that we could use to determine whether, one, someone would be interested in opening one, and two, be able to predict what effect that might bring, and three, determine if there would be any offsetting effect. We're determining at this point that the motion to move the moratorium forward is not going to have an effect on the current town budget.
Was there any information sought in order to predict that? Was there anything from other states who've already had this as an example used to establish that criteria? Was there anything outside of Massachusetts looked at, or were you strictly looking at what was available to Lunenburg at the time, that it was not available to anyone in Massachusetts?
We were strictly looking at what the current impact on the current budget would be if the moratorium was put forward.
Mr. Moderator, to answer the first question, the planning board's intent is not to drag this out as long as possible. Its intent is to offer the prohibition and regulation option as a package in one sitting, where the efficacy of prohibition will be immediate upon the opportunity for a ballot vote to be passed, and if the ballot vote is passed. So it's a two-tier approach. They didn't want to have a gap between a bylaw passing and a vote, so they want to offer that as one package. And again, the intent was to do it for this town meeting, but the Secretary of State's office does not allow those initiatives on statewide ballots. And
Ms. Adams.
I just wanted to make a comment that this article doesn't have anything to do with a yes or no for marijuana in Lunenburg. It's really just about time for planning. And then that brings us to an outcome where people have been able to and can continue to participate in the discussion. And so there's no yes or no for marijuana in this. It's really a yes or no for good time for good planning.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to add to that comment and say that while I agree, I'm not sure it's in the purview of the planning board to actually propose a warrant or a ballot article for prohibition, and those have not been discussed. I am in favor of this particular article because it would not leave us unprotected in terms of protective bylaws while those decisions are made.
I would make a motion that the selectmen recommend approval of this article.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Recommend approval.
Thank you. Declare we're ready to vote. Article 16. All those in favor, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay. Passes by more than 2/3. Article 17, please. Ms. Ernst. Looking for the petitioner. That maybe is her coming down. Just hold on a sec, sir. Ms.
I'm
Ernst?
not the petitioner.
Oh, you're the petitioner.
No.
No, I need the petitioner to move the article first, sir. Ms. Ernst, come on down. Come up to the microphone at the podium, okay?
Judith Ernst, 568 Flat Hill Road.
Yep, just say what you, I move the town, say that. Read this.
Oh, I see. I move that the town vote to amend the Code of Lunenburg by adding a new chapter 192 entitled Reduction of Plastic Bags as printed in the special town meeting warrant.
Okay, is there a second? There's a second, okay. And Selectmen and Finance, what was your recommendation? Finance, what was your recommendation?
Finance Committee found no direct financial effect.
Okay, Selectmen, you're going to wait. Thank you. Ms. Ernst, address the article, please.
The production and use of thin film, I'm sorry, I have to do this. Thin film single-use plastic checkout bags have significant impacts on the environment, including, but not limited to, contributing to potential death of marine animals through ingestion and entanglement, contributing to pollution of the land environment, creating a burden to solid waste collection and recycling facilities, clogging storm drainage systems, and requiring the use of millions of barrels of crude oil nationally for their manufacture.
Stay right there, okay? Do you want to address the article, sir?
Yeah, my name is Richard Delaney, 205 Houghton's Mill Road. I've been a resident of Lunenburg now for 27 years. I moved here in '91. It's a wonderful town.
Everybody's got to get nice and close to the microphones and project your outdoor voice. We're not doing noise control yet. Go ahead.
All right, sorry. I oppose this because, you know, just most of the article is all about penalties and what to do. And you're bad guys, don't do these things. But when you just look at the purpose and the intent itself, it's just the production and use of thin film plastic checkout bags have significant impacts on the environment, including but not limited to contributing to the potential death of marine animals through ingestion and entanglement, contributing to pollution of the land environment, which would be litter, creating a burden to solid waste collection and recycling facilities, and clogging storm drainages and requiring the use of millions of barrels of crude oil. Well, I've never found...
Speak into the microphone. Don't
sorry.
talk to them. They can't hear you.
I've never found a dead bird or a fish or any other animal in my property because there was a plastic bag in the yard. But I do have a cat. I have a cat that goes and eats rats and mice and chipmunks and birds and everything else. So I don't want to ban the cat. But this doesn't even pertain to that. If you see fish, I don't know how many people in town have seen fish entangled in a plastic bag, but no one's ever complained to me about something like that. If there's entanglement, it's probably in a loose fishing line or maybe a net or something that someone left in the water. So I don't think that even applies to it. Contributing to pollution, we all recycle our trash. We should be recycling everything we do have. You know, recycle it, reuse it, reduce the amount that you use, but don't go out and just blatantly ban things like that. Creating a burden to waste, well, that's the recycling. Clogging drainage, I don't know, I haven't heard anything in town about a lot of drains or storm drains being clogged at all. No one's ever said anything to me about that. And requiring the use of millions of barrels of crude oil. So well, there's crude oil and natural gas byproducts that are used in making polyethylene that are used in these bags. But there's billions of barrels of crude oil that you use in your home to heat it and in your cars to power them. So millions of barrels is a small, small percentage, and it's really not an issue. So I just don't agree with it at all.
Thank you, sir. You'll get a chance to respond, Ms. Ernst. You will. You can stand there, but I'm going to get back to you. Let's just hear what everybody else got to say, okay? Go ahead.
Hi. Ashley Shaw, 25 Wallace Park, but I'm here tonight to represent 494 Electric Avenue, Sean Patrick's Restaurant. We just want to speak that we are opposed to this, as it will increase costs if we have to get rid of plastic bags. We use these single-use bags for our catering company, when we do catering for the military, when we pack up their bags lunch. When you get a to-go order, when you bring home food, it doesn't seem like it would be a big cost, but the plastic bags do make a big difference in the price from plastic and paper. And it's going to affect a lot of some of the small businesses in this town that are using small bags to keep their prices down. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ernst, there's a gentleman behind you. Let's let him speak. He's got some bags. Go ahead.
Clarence Floyd, 720 Goodrich Street. And yes, I have my plastic bags with me, a few today. And I'd like to encourage everyone to vote no on Article 17, which seeks to ban the use of plastic bags by town retailers. This will have a detrimental effect on all retailers in town, such as Walmart, Hannaford, and others, many of whom offer recycling of any bag you bring in already. Government regulation is not the answer when simple recycling will do the job. I remember when there was no such thing as a plastic bag. So I thank you for your time, and I ask you to vote no on this article.
Thank you. Sir?
John Tata, 135 Flynn Road. I think this is a noble idea. I think it's really a fruitless idea. I'm absolutely shocked that I don't see a whole bunch of people here from Walmart, from CVS, from Hannaford opposing this. Now, I, for one, use plastic bags. My wife, she's very efficient, and she carries all these cloth bags in her car, and she uses them all the time, and I have a couple when I think about it. But you know, after 7 decades, sometimes your memory fails you.
What happened to me at the meeting, so there you go.
Yeah. So I'm going to say that I'm opposed to this because I think it has a significant negative financial impact on the town revenues.
Thank you. Ma'am? Hello? Right over there. Go ahead.
Heather Bowen, 188 Flat Hill Road. And I'm not talking from the retailer's perspective at all, because really they might benefit. I'm talking from the people who go to the grocery store and buy plastic bags to put in their trash cans. I, for one, and people I've been talking to, we love these plastic bags because we don't just throw them away. We put them in every small trash can in our house and reuse them and carry stuff around, and they're useful. So the number of milliliters of what it says in here, requiring millions of barrels of crude oil nationally for their manufacture, if we no longer have these trash bags everybody uses their home, I don't know how many people do here, or any of you, people are going to then start buying them. They're far less detrimental to the environment than our Lunenburg trash bags. And so then if we go on to another point in this, which is that what is permitted in 3.3, these thin film plastic bags for dry cleaning, newspapers, produce, meat, bulk foods, wet items, and other similar merchandise, typically without handles, well, you can take any one of these plastic bags and cut off the handles, and there you go. So what's going to stop Walmart or Hannaford's or anyone else from just cutting off the handles? And in my house this afternoon, when I was going over the warrant with the kids who were working on my farm, they thought this was the most hysterical thing possible because they thought, these are plastic bags that really it should be the people who stop littering. They tried to clog my kitchen sink with a plastic bag and they couldn't do it. So, I mean, I'm sure it can clog things, but it should be people being responsible for not littering and not saying we should ban them in Lunenburg. Just personally, I'll just start shopping at the Hannafords in Fitchburg because I don't really want to buy plastic bags for my entire house when they're going to give them to me for free. And I don't litter them, I use them up. And just like with those little rings you get when you buy a six-pack of Coke, you just cut them up so they don't hurt those animals, the dolphins, the marine animals that might be in Lunenburg. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to allow Ms. Ernst to respond to some of the questions if she wants to this time, and I'll give you the final word. So go ahead. You can address what you've heard so far. You're the petitioner.
I'll just be brief regarding the...
And nice and close to that microphone.
Yes, nice
and project.
And close to the mic. I will project. So I am all for reusing any kind of bags. The problem with these plastic bags is that, yes, they can be recycled. Most of them don't get recycled because once they are used in a trash bag, then together with the trash, they end up in another trash bag, which then ends up in the landfill. I actually visited Harvey Recycling in Westford yesterday, and I was amazed at the amount of these plastic bags just flying around in the facility. The recycling facility is most frustrated with these bags because they clog the machines. So I've seen people put their recycling inside these bags and tie them up and put them in the recycling bin. Well, they just end up in the trash because once they get to Westboro, they're not going to deal with it. It's just trash. So in the trash, these bags don't break down ever. They fragment. So that's all. I listed a few things on there. They don't ever biodegrade. They fragment over time. And these tiny particles then can end up in water streams and just about anywhere in the environment. And so the Lunenburg trash bags are different because from what I understand, by purchasing those bags, we contribute some to the trash removal in our town. So it's a kind of a small, but it's a subsidy. Also, when we pay for the bags, then you will think, I mean, I think, how much waste do I want to create? How many of these bags do I want to use up every week? So when the bags are given us for free, we don't have that dilemma, right? Because we always have more and more. How much we actually create in waste is no longer a problem. So I hope I answered some of the questions.
Thank you. Right here. You can hold it. Doesn't have to stay in the stand.
Rhonda Lucia, 181 Reservoir Road. I just wanted to say I'm probably one of the most environmentally conscious people. My car is loaded with tote bags, but occasionally I run into the store and I'm in a hurry and I need to use a plastic bag. I'm not going to run back out to my car and grab a tote bag and go all the way back in after I already have a cart full of things. So I just think it is going overboard. And, you know, there's been more than one item on the warrant tonight where I think we are doing, where government is trying to have way too much control and dictate over our lives. And this is just another example. And I would urge everyone to please choose liberty and have some self-responsibility if you do use bags, plastic bags, recycle them. I mean, it just gets to a point where I'm tired of the government dictating to me what I'm going to do, and I would hope everyone would feel the same way.
I'm going to give you the last word, Ms. Ernst, okay?
I just have something I forgot to mention is that
Go ahead.
I heard people mention the big bins where the recycling, where these bags can be recycled at Walmart and Target. And so these companies are required to have these options because they are providing the bags. What I found out during the research is that once these bags are reused, hence contaminated, even if they end up in these recycling big bins at these big companies and they are recycled and made into cubes, because they are contaminated. The US has strict clean air laws, so they're most likely going to get shipped. All these recycled bags are going to get shipped overseas or to the Far East, because I think China has already made changes in their policy. So to countries that don't have these regulations. So most of those bags that are recycled here are not, they don't end up in the processed in this country.
Thank you. Sir.
Hello, John Rabbit, 314 Townsend Harbor Road. You know, this is not asking a lot of our society to essentially, let's not use plastic bags anymore. This is just a single small step. The argument with regard to the retailers are going to be hurt. I absolutely guarantee you that as soon if we eliminate the plastic bag, they'll charge you 5 cents for a recyclable paper bag. I'm amazed at companies like Costco. They don't give you anything. There's the boxes out back. Recycle those, take them back. I know in our cars we carry piles of them. I forget all the time. I do take the plastic bag. But if they offered me the option for a nickel of getting a paper bag, I'd grab it. Because let me tell you, I know for an absolute fact that essentially those bags do break down. They do turn into small particles. They are contaminating our surface waters. Every one of those drains out in the streets, you know, they carry those particles down, and they're in the food supply. They're affecting our kids. And by the way, our town sells compost bins. You don't need them for, right, fellas? We sell them. We almost give them away. Use compost bins. Take the little pail, throw it in there, haul it out back. You don't need the plastic bags to the degree you think you need them. You know, bring a rucksack, carry something. But this is just a small, small thing. And you know, we're not going to solve our entire environmental problem in one big fell swoop. But this one little drop will be part of a flood. And we should be thinking of that. And how much is that really to us? I totally support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir? We're just slowing things down. Sir, go ahead.
Peter Stella, 31 Chase Road, Lunenburg, obviously. I just wanted to kind of like, for the people that are supporting this thing, because I don't really support it, I think it's an inconvenience to retailers and such, and myself, I'm going to go probably to Demolis, Market Basket, so I won't be, I don't go to Hannaford, their food's kind of pricey. But I'm not trying to sell anything here. Sorry about that. But I've traveled a little bit. A lot of people think I'm an electrician, and I am. I do electrical work. But I used to work for General Electric. I worked for several engineering firms. And one engineering firm sent me to Brazil. Got off the plane in Brazil, and I didn't go right to Rio. So I got the tour. I drove from the airport outside of Sao Paulo into Sao Paulo. And on the ride in, there was a river. And in the river were all sorts of floating things, plastic bags, plastic bottles, etc. The water, everybody that grew up around here remembers, it's my age, remembers when the river in Fitchburg changed color. They called it the Technicolor River, the Natural River. So that river would change color because we dumped all sorts of junk in it. Well, the river in Sao Paulo wasn't changing color, but as the water came over a dam, there was like a foam. And that's like, it's because of pollution in the river. And when I went to Mexico, and I went there a lot of times, I used to drive a car, I used to ride with this guy. His name was Elio Spinelli. And Elio was an old engineer, wrinkled, used to chain smoke cigarettes all day long. And when he was getting done with his soda, he just whipped it right out the window, right? And same thing. And I used to return my rental car, and I used to think, I bet you when I return my rental car there, they look in the back seat and they go, does this guy know that the windows roll down? And the worst thing I saw, I took a side road one day. I'm driving along, and I look at my GPS, and I see this little blue spot. It's supposed to be a lake. I look down at the lake, and it looks like the leaves of the growth in the lake, it looks like it's green, all right? The nice and lush green, and it looks like there's like water or something on it because I get these reflections coming back at me. And the whole lake is like this. And I get down to the dam, and I drive across the dam, and the dam is open, and that's why the lake is green, and there's all the stuff growing in it. They're fixing the dam. And that's when I see what all those reflections are. It wasn't water, it was bottles, plastic bottles that had just been thrown in the lake. So, I mean, the United States, we've got much cleaner rivers. People don't throw stuff out. We're supposed to have fines. You can recycle all this stuff anyway. The only way we're going to, keep this stuff from going in the ocean is to pressure other countries to fix their problems. And you got to change the attitudes of the people in those other countries. I recycle my stuff. I don't throw stuff out my window. I recycle all my copper and steel from my business. So if the matter passes or not, the solution to our environmental problems isn't just the United States. The United States is doing, if you've been to other countries, I mean, you go to the tourist spots, like I say, you go to Rio de Janeiro, you go to the wonderful beach, and it's beautiful. I'm sure I've never been there, but I've been to Puerto Rico, and there are places in Puerto Rico that are clean, and then there's places that are dirty. So that's my point, is that it's got to go beyond us.
Thank
So,
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir.
Richard Mayhew, 88 Laurel Lane. Couple of things. First of all, I'm always amazed, and I shouldn't be. I've also been around for 7 decades, at how progressive sometimes Lunenburg is, and then at other times where we seem like a backwater. I don't know if anybody here shops over in Shrewsbury. Pretty large town, Route 9, all of those stores. Shrewsbury bans plastic bags. You go there, wherever you go, you get a paper bag. It's not a big deal. I have a trunk full, both cars, and occasionally, as the woman says, I sometimes, if I'm going in for one thing, I may forget. Not a big deal to go back to the car. I mean, it just seems like that this is should not be this big an issue. It's think globally, act locally. This is something we can do. Okay, we can't go down and clean up Rio de Janeiro or Sao Paulo or any place else. But, if you go to Europe, most of those places, they don't use, plastic bags. And as far as water, I live on Whalum Lake. And believe me, I live downwind from the lakefront. I get plenty of plastic bags to recycle out of the pond. So, I think this would be a helpful thing. The retailers, believe me, they'll make it up some way. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Yeah, just a few quick things. So,
Just in your name?
Nathan Lockwood, 91 Main Street, Lunenburg, Mass. Yeah. So, thank UDIT for bringing this forward. As the gentleman ahead of me, the previous speaker mentioned, countries that don't have regulations and, some level of enforcement of certain basic environmental controls can end up in situations that we are real thankful to not be in. And I think, as the gentleman was just mentioning, this is a real good one. As far as needing regulation, yeah, regulation's not fun, but it's sometimes our only option. I mean, the market that we enjoy gives us competition and cheap stuff, which is great, doesn't put a price on certain things that are real important. So all this pollution of the plastic breaking down into small pieces that may be affecting our ecosystems in ways we don't understand, maybe affecting our health and our food chains in ways we don't understand, maybe killing wildlife. We don't pay a price. We don't pay the price for that. If you can put a price, whatever the price you could put on it is, when the store purchases the plastic bag, or when they give us the plastic bag and we pay through it, through our, in effect, through our grocery bill. So I mean, regulations. they're not the fun part of life in government, but they're real important in keeping the quality of life and quality environment that we do enjoy. And as the gentleman, a previous speaker said, there was life before disposable plastic bags, and the stores in towns that have this, they offer paper bags, so you don't have to even go back to your car. So thanks.
Thank you. You're up.
I'm Ann McCroskey, 1111 Northfield Road. That's the address where people usually leave their televisions. and lots of liquor bottles. I think it's important to do this because even though we can all choose to recycle and to not use the bags and so forth, most people don't make that choice. In my experience, at my lovely clean office building in Chelmsford, people throw that we have recycle bins in every cubicle and people don't use them. I've traveled in the very lovely deep south. They don't have recycling. I think we need to at least be a little light. We need. It's one of those things where you have to make a point to push the envelope and get other people to do it. And also, I think you need to make it harder for people to litter. That's all.
Thank you. Yep.
My name is Jacqueline Dwyer, 361 Mulpus. Just because you have not seen a bag floating in water does not mean it does not happen. That would be like saying because you ate today, there is no such thing as world hunger. That makes no sense. So I support this 100%, and I think that it is the smallest of small things that we can possibly do to protect our planet. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Tom Alonso, 284 Lancaster Avenue. I think few people would think that pollution in general and plastics are not a big problem and certainly a global problem. And sometimes it can seem that the problem is too big, so anything you do is drop in the bucket. But you know what? Lots of drops in a bucket fill the bucket. I don't think you shouldn't do anything because you look at the problem as being too big. Every little piece makes a contribution. This is one of those pieces. So I support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Brian Lang, 67 Malpas Road. I move the question.
I thought you might. I heard that. Okay, hold on. We're going to, before Mr. Archambault got a chance to do it. Okay. But as I told you earlier, I have prerogative. I told Ms. Ernst she would have the final word, and she will, and then we will vote. So Ms. Ernst, if you want to say one last thing, you may. And you may kibitz. You bet.
I just would like to say that everybody who supports this, I'm grateful, and that I would like reduction in not just plastic bags. So this is just one area. I don't want our paper bags to flood our trash either. Bring your, this is my lunchbox, and I have, just reuse the bags. Each of these lasts 2 decades minimum for $1 or 50 cents. Thank you.
Okay, so now we have to vote on ending debate. Okay, that's the first thing. Okay. All those in favor of moving the question or ending debate, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Debate is ended. Now, on the article, all those in favor, have we had the Board of Selectmen's recommendation? Well, let's have it.
For purposes of discussion, I move that the Selectmen recommend approval.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I make a comment that I'm a little surprised that there was so much concern about this. I understand not wanting government regulation intruding into your home, but this could not be further from that. This is a citizen's petition. An individual puts this forward to ask us as a community to say we can be better, and we want to do something to help the world, starting with us. So I'm in favor of this.
I'm chairman of the Lunenburg Stormwater Task Force, and the Stormwater Task Force had a discussion about this, and we are totally in support of this. Bags do clog the storm drains. I pick up bags every Friday before the trash comes. I fill a Home Depot bucket with bags and trash in the length of my property. I'm not going a quarter of a mile. We really need to do something about this. I've been in negotiations with Casella because they're talking about Casella is our waste and recycling hauler. According to them, our recyclables are 22% contaminated, and a large piece of that is plastic bags. People put their paper to be recycled in plastic bags and then put it out for recycling. Honest to God, that's what they said. We need to get our recyclables down to 5% contamination. And if we don't, we're going to be paying Casella a lot more money. We've got to take this seriously. This is going to cost us money. It's a very small thing to do. Thank you.
Okay. I've had a really hard time with this one because I use the bags a lot. My biggest use is for snow boots that get put in another bag, and I have 4 children, and each day they go out for recess in the winter, and the snow boots go in that so they don't get the snow pants dirty. And so I'm thinking, what will I use instead? Will I buy a plastic bag and use it? But then I also think that there were not plastic bags at some point, and there were probably always snow boots, and people probably figured out a way to, no, honestly, and probably challenge themselves to figure out a way to
Some of
transport
us have
snow
been
boots.
around for 70. We know you used to use the bread bag inside your boot.
No, but in all seriousness, I mean, I think you do have to challenge yourself to improve what you're doing. And if I'm going to replace a plastic bag with a plastic bag, then I'm not going to improve upon the damage that they cause. So I struggle with this one because I really, truly see both sides of it.
And I support this article. I'll have to find a different bag for my dog.
So among those selectmen, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Selectmen support.
Okay. All those in favor of the article? Pardon? Okay. All those in favor of Article 17, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. I declare that the article has passed. If there are 7 people who want to doubt my count, you may stand and say, I doubt it. There are only 2, Mr. Floyd. Sorry. Article 8, and again, that article and the next article. Citizen petitions, you want to get work done, whether it's by amendment or by petition, please work with us. The last article, number 18. Come right up to the microphone and move the article.
I would like to move that the town vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to convey the property located at 174 Northfield Road rear, shown on Assessor's Map 041, Block 3, Lot D, from the Board of Selectmen for general purposes to the Board of Selectmen for the purpose of conveyance to Deborah St. Vrain on such terms and conditions and for such consideration as the Board of Selectmen deems appropriate, and to take any legal action necessary to effectuate the same.
Is there a second? Thank you. Now, you should introduce yourself.
Debbie St. Vrain, 6
Okay.
Iris Court.
All right, okay, and selectmen are going to make their recommendation after debate. Finance, your recommendation.
The Finance Committee has a bit of an issue. Basically, we're finding no material financial effect if the board were to proceed with this. We also understand that this point could be moot if it's determined that the town does not have control of the property. But if the town does have control of the property, we find no material financial effect.
Thank you. Tell us about the purpose of the article, ma'am. Tell us about your article. There you go.
Okay. My turn?
Yep.
Okay. I would just like to read you my history with 174 Northfield Road rear. You can see it on the map. My house is highlighted, and the parcel in question is also highlighted. And I'd also like to share the results of the title search so far. This parcel of land abuts my exclusive use area at the Woodlands upon which my single-family home is built. The parcel is .08 acres of land that can only be accessed from private property or by boat from Hickory Hills Lake. There is no access from the road. Before we purchased 6 Iris Court in June of 2000, my husband and I did our homework. We visited the Lunenburg Town Hall Assessor's Office and reviewed town land maps of the exclusive use area that we were considering purchasing and what properties abutted it. We wanted to make sure that we clearly understood the boundaries. We also wanted to understand the nature of all abutting property. The parcel in question today was not on any maps shown to us at the time. For 18 years, I've used this parcel as is part of my backyard and waterfront area where my dock is placed. Upon buying our home in 2000, my husband and I were told the parcel was part of our exclusive use area at the Woodlands. We worked hard to make improvements to the property. This included obtaining permission to place our dock on it from Hickory Hills Lake Board of Directors, the Lunenburg Conservation Commission, and the Lunenburg Planning Board in July of 2001. All parties granted us permission to place our dock on it in spring of 2001 without questioning the Woodlands' ownership of it, and in effect recognizing it as part of our exclusive use area. In 2009, a neighbor discovered the existence of this parcel while looking at maps for his own personal reasons. He told us of the discovery, and my husband and I started the process of looking into what had happened and hopefully securing the small landlocked abutting piece of land that we already considered our backyard. Sadly, my husband was diagnosed with terminal cancer at this time, and our attention was drawn elsewhere. Then again, in March of 2014, I again tried to pursue purchase of this parcel. The then town manager, Carrie Spidell, told me that Lunenburg had hundreds of these little parcels all over Lunenburg, and that the town had neither the time nor the wherewithal to deal with them. In addition to trying to work with the town manager, I called the tax assessor's office in an effort to gather more information and spoke with Louise, who was also unable to see the parcel on a map she had at the time. Louise directed me to Harold Scheid, the regional tax assessor. Harold Scheid tried to help me look into the matter, and he directed me to speak to a title specialist. Both men dissuaded me from moving ahead due to cost, difficulty, and uncertain outcomes. In February of this year, I discovered that the Hickory Hills directors were interested in pursuing ownership of the parcel. This showed me that there was, in fact, another path forward that was not presented earlier, and I hope to move ahead on my own to find out the facts about the parcel and possibly make it legally part of the 6 Iris Court property, as it has already been unofficially all along. In terms of practical usage of the land, it just makes sense for this tiny piece to be used and cared for exclusively by the owners of 6 Iris Court. For nearly 20 years, the parcel has been an integral part of my life and no one else's. I lost my husband in 2010, and some of his ashes reside under a rock on this parcel. Conveying the land to 6 Iris Court is the easiest and the best way to ensure that it is cared for going forward. In addition, the Hickory Hills Board of Directors and the Woodlands Board of Trustees have no objections. And regarding the title search, I've been working with a lawyer, her name is Christine Morgan, who commissioned a title search on October 18th with her title examiner, who is named Louis Nicolosi. While he expected to be done and have the results by tonight, and actually well before tonight, he is still not finished due to the difficulty of the work because the land was not on any maps prior to 2009. It just appeared on maps in 2009. So therefore, the results are still unclear, but hopefully expected by Friday of this week. Given this lack of clarity, I hope the town will choose to vote tonight to convey this property to me should the final outcome of the title search show that the town has the authority to convey to me. This will be known in a few days, by Friday. Voting tonight will give the town the framework to act on, should it come down to town ownership. The title search may lead in other directions, and I will assume all the responsibilities, actions, and expenses necessary for continuing the search to determine who has legal ownership of this parcel. Even if the land is conveyed to me, I have a lot more work to do to gain a clear title. By voting tonight, the town can divest themselves of more time and more work, as hours spent so far on this subject has been substantial. If conveyance is the outcome, the town will gain property tax income on this property where it has had none in many, many years. And that's my presentation. There's another slide after this. This is sort of showing it way out, and that's closer up, and maybe go to the next one. This is, the parcel is in the back of my backyard, right behind the grassed area. This is how it looks from the house on the right. It's how it looks from my patio. And this is how it would look from the lake. That's the triangle where the chairs are. And this is the cove that's next to it. And then this is the paperwork that was, well, there's 3 of them. This is the lake approval. This is the Conservation Commission approval and the Land Planning Board approval.
Excellent. Stay right there for questions. Sir.
Good evening. My name is Brandon Kibbe, 146 Rolling Acres Road. As Carrie Speidel did point out, that there is a number of these parcels throughout town that kind of fit into this category. And I'm all for the town considering reuse or selling some of these parcels that are truly surplus back to get them back on the tax rolls. My problem is with the process. It seems to me that if the town is going to move forward with the sale of some sort of surplus property, it should be open to bidding. And so any interested party could bid on that property and have a right to it. You very well would be the most well-positioned person to bid on that property, but it's not open. This is directing the town to sell it to a specific individual. And
It was my understanding that that is what we're doing here today. This is the beginning of the process. It's a very public process. We're doing it at town meeting. It's been posted several places. It's been sent to every home, and no one has come forward. This is my understanding of how the process works.
Mr. Moderator, my concern with the way the article is written is it says to convey all such property to Deborah St. Vrain. Very specific.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joan Pease, 11 Wintergreen Court. My first comment is in my role as a director for the Hickory Hills Landowners Incorporation. At our October board meeting, we took a vote and we unanimously decided that we have no problem with the town conveying this land to Deborah St. Vrain. The Hickory Hills Lake has given her permission to put her dock on it many years ago and has approved that all along, and she's been a good steward of the land. Also, I am a member of the Woodlands community, and I have had the opportunity firsthand to take a look at this tiny 0.08 acres piece of land that abuts her backyard, and it is not available to anyone else to walk on unless they go on private property. You can't get to it unless you were to go on private property. So I support Deborah's petition.
Thank you. Ms. Adams?
Okay. I just have a few comments on this, and they may not go in an order, but bear with me. One, I take municipal land conveyance very seriously. And first of all, we don't know if we own the parcel. So as we sit here tonight, I feel very funny even considering conveying something we don't know if it's ours, and therefore it's sort of a non-issue as of tonight. I get real worried about setting precedent, and as the previous speaker mentioned, this is conveying municipal land to a specific person. So what would prevent people, a lot of people abut town land and these type of parcels, and so I may want to convey, the old primary lot to myself. can I make a citizen petition article and accomplish the same thing? And people could be trying to convey land to themselves left and right. And like the previous speaker said, I think if there's parcels that aren't being used, conveying them makes perfect sense, but in such a way that everybody has access and there's a bidding process and we could even generate revenue for the town. And with that, I would have questions. There's a lot of procurement laws with land conveyance, and I'm not sure if in an article like this we can legally, even if we owned it, convey land directly to one person without meeting a variety of things, and I think is it Chapter 30B.
So I think you're asking if we can ask town council. So let's
yeah,
do
and
that.
sort of.
Let's do that.
But then I'll just
Okay,
finish
go
my
ahead.
stream of thought here. One of the proposed advantages was to increase taxes, but a .08 parcel there it's negligible in terms of how it will help with taxes. And there is another abutter to the property, so when it comes to putting it up, I don't think it's fair for the town to give a piece of municipal land to one person and not another. If I was the other abutter, I may be interested in bidding on it and feel that that should be an opportunity. I don't think if the town owns this, it needs to retain it, but I think it needs to have a very consistent and fair process so that people aren't trying to convey themselves land in other scenarios that may be more serious than this one.
Excellent. Town council.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So I guess I'll say first and foremost that I hope that the public appreciates that when a citizen's petition is received by the selectmen are required to place that petition, presuming it has a sufficient number of signatures, on the town meeting warrant, and required to do so in almost identical form as is received from the petitioner. So these questions often arise about the legalities of a citizen's petition, and we have nothing to do about it if we receive something that would be unlawful or could not be carried out because of legal impediments. We have to place it on the town meeting warrant the way that it's received. With that said, town meeting also has no authorization through an article on the warrant to affect the conveyance of land. Town meeting doesn't convey land. What town meeting does is town meeting grants authorization to your Board of Selectmen to eventually carry out that conveyance of land. You give them the authority, and that's what this article seeks to do. It seeks to, first of all, repurpose this land for the purpose of conveyance, and then to grant the Board of Selectmen the authority for such consideration and on such terms and conditions as it deems appropriate to convey the property and to do so and to take any other legal action as may be necessary to effect that purpose. So that's the first point of clarity here, that that's what this article authorizes. So I don't see anything within the four corners of this article that would be unlawful. There are certainly many questions that remain, and I would agree with the statements that were just made, that we've got to determine first and foremost whether or not the town has ownership interest, sufficient ownership interest to convey anything with regard to this parcel of property. Second of all, we have a usual municipal checklist that we follow through with before the town would even proceed, or at least I would recommend that the Board of Selectmen follow through before it even proceed to convey a parcel of this sort. And then there are the 30B procurement implications. And the procurement doesn't always apply. There are exceptions to procurement depending upon the value of the property. But we've not even gotten to the step in the process where we'd be determining the value of the property. All that this article seeks to do by way of a citizen's petition is authorize a selectman on appropriate terms and conditions, following compliance with all those legal requirements, to convey the property.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, through you to Town Council.
I think I've forgotten your name.
My name is Dave Rogers, 82 Highland Street. I'm not making that mistake again. Town Council, does the doctrine of adverse possession factor into this seemingly common sense situation?
Through you, Mr. Moderator.
Go ahead.
So it could, and because the title has yet to be received by the proponent, the petitioner, meaning that I've not seen it yet either, I don't know the answer to that question. The general rule in Massachusetts is that a private party cannot adversely possess against a municipality with a few exceptions. So if the land is determined to be owned by the municipality, it is highly unlikely that that land would have been or has been adversely possessed by the petitioner or by anybody else for that matter against the town.
Okay. It seems to me when the situation I heard this evening, common sense should prevail, I think. I mean, we have an opportunity to take care of this situation, and I think that we should vote affirmatively here and do everything we possibly can for this lady, given the set of circumstances that she's gone through. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir? Go ahead.
Yeah, Ed Wexner, 8 Irish Court, Lunenburg, where the Woodlands. I am on the board of trustees of the Woodlands, and as was mentioned, the board has favorably agreed and voted to allow Debbie to go forward. We are in the butter to that very small parcel of land. As was pointed out, it's 0.08 acres, so it's very, very small. And we're totally in favor if the Board of Selectmen have the ability to convey that piece of property to Debbie St. Vrain. We're in full agreement to have that happen. Full
Thank you.
support. Thank you.
Troy Daniels, 94 Main Street. I just had one question. We're voting to convey the land to Deborah St. Vrain, is that right? No.
Authorize the selectmen.
The selectmen, the authority to. But the land that's adjacent to or that she lives upon is not in her name. It's in the Woodlands Board of Trustees, is that right?
Ask.
And would the town, what we're voting on, would that allow the Board of Selectmen to convey it to the Woodlands at Hickory Hills Board of Trustees?
Can you answer the question, petitioner?
I think maybe Ed or Bob Pease should speak to that.
Can you address the question, Mr. Pease, about the ownership?
Bob Pease, 11 Wintergreen Court. I'm also on the Woodlands Board of Trustees. Deborah lives on the single-family homes, the detached single-family homes at the Woodlands all have exclusive use of different parcels of land that are commonly owned. So yes, she does live on commonly owned land. You know, we've been asked, the Board of Trustees was asked, would we be in favor of accepting this parcel from Deborah? You know, if she paid, you know, all the costs. And we said we would be in favor, you know, after we check out all the legalities and stuff. So I don't know if that answers the question or not.
I thought it did. Sir.
John Taylor, 135 Flynn Road. Question number one through you, Mr. Moderator. Hickory Hills, as I understand it, is a privately owned lake access. There's no public access. Is that
Right.
true? So therefore, I would conclude that only you or your neighbors could benefit from use of this property.
Only one neighbor. There's only, if you want to, Heather, bring one of the maybe the first slide back. There's only one abutter. It's that big piece of property to the right. It was once called the Montori property, and it's been since sold and subdivided in half, so you can kind of picture, yes, a line clear down it. The homes are clear up on Northfield Road, but those homes own that whole section, so have all that waterfront. You can see, if you can see, Heather, can you show how you draw the line from the triangle up to the corner of the Montori property?
Right up here?
No, up high, right there. So now take that coordinate and divide that in half, and that's how much waterfront the abutter has. If I don't have the triangle, I have, again, if you, maybe I can do it. So,
in the very center.
Take the microphone with you, okay? I think.
so this is the scope of the abutter.
Right.
Sorry. This would be, I'll kind of draw the outline, this would be the scope of the abutter's property. It goes up to Northfield Road along this line, and so they have waterfront, whoops, sorry, from, if you're talking strictly waterfront, one homeowner from here to the middle of that line. I think it was divided pretty much in half. I can't say for sure. If I don't have the triangle, my lot line runs just right off my house, going down this way. I would have like that amount of waterfront. So, and also speaking to Katie's concerns, this is a conditional conveyance. We don't know what's going to happen. You know, I'm just trying to seek the honest truth here of who owns this land, and that's going to be borne out in a few days. And to put all this work off that I've put in, the selectmen have put in, the finance committee's put in, all my friends have put in, and just put this on hold for another forever just seems wrong to me, especially when the town sort of played a part in this happening in the first place. I've yet to have anyone describe to me how a parcel of land can just pop up on a map after 10 years. And I feel like the town needs to be part of the ramifications that have happened because this has happened to me. I feel like the town needs to help a little bit. I know it's a hard thing, and I just want to seek, I honestly want to seek out who the real owner is. It very well could be the abutter. And if it's the abutter, it's the abutter. And if it's the Woodlands, then I'm good to go. But the truth is coming out in a few days. Unfortunately, you know, they first thought it would take a week for the title search to be done, but it's been almost a month now, and it's a very difficult thing to do because it's a very difficult situation. So
Thank you for clarifying.
Let's get back to Mr. Tatum, okay? Go ahead.
And as I see it, then as an outsider, if I wanted access to that property and I wanted to buy it, my access would either be to sneak through somebody's property, you're the abutter, or arrive by aircraft.
right.
And I probably wouldn't have room for a
That's
landing
right.
pad
It's
there,
really
would I?
of no use to anyone but me or the abutter.
I'm just trying to solidify the concept that that's pretty useless to put on the open market, in my mind. And therefore, I'm very positive in supporting your petition. And as I said, I was concerned about the plastic bags because of the revenue issue. Well, guess what? She's going to help our revenue, folks. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, through you to Town Council, another...
I know.
Dave
I
Passios.
thought somebody would ask him. Thank you.
Thank you. I forgot. 56, Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. Through you to Town Council. With the knowledge now that we have that Deborah legally does not own her property, how does that play into the fact that she is asking for us for permission to the select board to convey this piece to her, where it'll actually need to be conveyed to the association that owns the Woodlands?
Go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Moderator. So I don't think it has an effect. I think what I heard the petitioner say, and she can correct me if I'm wrong, was that the article has been fashioned such that the conveyance would be to her, but she has been in discussions with the Woodlands about potentially then conveying it to the Woodlands to become part of the common land in which certain parties have exclusive rights. Once she owns the land, she can do as she pleases with it. The reality is whether she has an ownership interest in the adjacent parcel or not is sort of irrelevant to whether she can acquire through a conveyance from the town this other piece. What the issue really is, and it was touched upon earlier, is whether this article can be affected in the way that it's drafted depending upon the implications of applying procurement law. because there may need to be a competitive process, because others may need to be notified, because others may express interest, notwithstanding the questions relating to ability to access the parcel. This article only provides the selectmen with authority to convey to the petitioner and nobody else. And so if it's determined ultimately that the conveyance should be to another party or should be to the Woodlands as opposed to the petitioner and then to the Woodlands, there wouldn't be a need for a further town meeting vote.
There wouldn't be what? Any what?
I defer. Brandon Kibbe, 146 Rolling Acres Road. We could probably solve this with a simple amendment, which is to strike "to Deborah St. Vrain" from this article. And therefore, the selectmen would have the full authority to go through whatever process they need to go through, to take it through whatever they need to meet, whatever regulations you're talking about. So I move that we amend this article to strike "to Deborah St. Vrain," and we'll resolve those issues.
Okay? So you have an amendment. We're going to continue, allow a couple other people to discuss the article, then we'll vote on the amendment, okay? You're up. To my right. Tapper Troy.
Go ahead.
Oh, you want to defer?
Yeah,
Everybody's going
because
to
I
defer.
want to hear his
Go ahead.
response.
My name is Walter Parkett, 10 Iris Court. One of the gentlemen here made the comment that let's use some common sense. That is a totally useless piece of land. The only person that can make any sense out of it or use of it is the person that lives at 6 Iris Court. I did a lot of research on this myself, and I have a suspicion that it was initially part of the Montori, and when the Montori properties were carved up, that wasn't carved with it. So I totally support her, and let's use common sense on this. We got a lot of lawyers in here, and there's all kinds of procedures that we have and things that we have to do it the right way, but let's use some common sense.
Thank you. Yep.
Carol Hatch, 41 Hilltop Lane, which is in Hickory Hills. I'm the vice president of the board of directors. I've walked that land. I've been involved in this matter since March of last year, and I see absolutely no reason to not convey this land to Deborah St. Vrain.
Thank you. Ms. Adams?
And I just want to follow up, since I've participated in this, I support you owning the land, but through a process that legally makes sense. We don't know if we are the owners of it, so I can't comfortably participate in conveying it. And then I feel like a process has to be fair. If there's even one abutter, it should go out to bid by the town, and I would feel very happy if in the end you owned it. I just don't want you to think I'm against your ownership of the land. I just like a process that's not so individualized.
Can I ask a question about that notification that you keep referring to? Is there a process where the town does that sort of notification? Because when the lake was going to buy this property in February, I was not notified. So I would like to know where that process exists and if it, because it wasn't followed for me.
Town council, what's the process if somebody's in a butter?
So there's no process that is, through you, Mr. Moderator, no process that is particular to a butter. So it's different, for example, than a permit process where state statute requires notice by certified mails to abutters. It's not anything like that. The procurement law requires that for certain types of conveyances from public entities like municipalities, and it's based upon things like the value of the property that is being conveyed, that a public process occur. And that process generally begins with publication, an RFP in certain instances. It all depends upon the value of the land or the good or supply or service that's being provided as well to a municipal entity. So that's a process that wouldn't have taken place, couldn't have taken place prior to tonight. There's no authority yet even to convey the property. What would occur is if the authority is given to the selectmen to convey the property, at such time as the conveyance is contemplated by the selectmen, the procurement law would be investigated, and depending upon where you fell with regard to process, the proper process would then be followed.
Okay.
Mr. Moderator,
Yes,
if I might,
and you might.
I, for one, trust the Board of Selectmen, and I would encourage the citizens to convey, this, and we will work with the town council and Mrs. St. Vrain to ensure that we have ownership, and if we do have ownership, that we convey it in the proper manner.
Thank you.
Just wanted to make the comment about Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street.
Someday I'm going to enforce the rule that you can only speak a second time on an article, but go ahead.
Everybody says that this is, 0.08 acres, tiny piece of property. Well, you know what? I can set up a lounge chair on that if I negotiate a right-of-way through the abutter's property to that piece of land. So it has some value to more than one person if you were to go that route. There's no absolutes even for 1,000 square feet. There is a way to access small pieces of property. I also believe that there is a navigable brook that flows through Hickory Hills Lake, and I believe that if I'm not mistaken, if you follow the route of the brook, you are entitled to canoe or paddle on that route, on that lake. Thank you.
Steve Ashambo, 662 Page Street. I move the question.
Second.
Sometimes people say the meeting goes too long, and that's all you've got to do is when you're ready, unless I think there's too much to debate. So first we have to vote on Mr. Kibbe's amendment. Mr. Kibbe's motion was to strike the to Deborah St. Vrain, okay? So we vote on that first. That requires a majority vote. So all those in favor of the amendment to strike her name from the article, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
The amendment is defeated. Well, stand up. I always say stand up, because I can't tell how many people are saying it until I see them. Okay, so there's 7 people. So the voters come down, the counters rather come down. Everybody still got a partner?
I lost my counter.
You lost your partner? Yeah. Okay. I know, huh? Well, grab somebody, Tata. Grab this gentleman right here. Somebody grab him. Okay. All right, we got counters everywhere? Thanks for staying, counters. Okay, all those in favor of the amendment, which is to strike her name, hold your card up. On my left.
19.
1-9.
1-9.
Got it.
Same here.
Pardon?
19.
19. And you're in the middle, right? 19 in the middle, yeah. Mr. Vogt?
We're not done yet.
We're not done yet. So everybody on the right that's in favor of the amendment, raising your cards, including the stage. On my right.
It would be 16.
1-6. Okay, everybody opposed to the amendment, raise your card. 1-6. Opposed to the amendment. This is just the amendment, striking the name. Yeah, pretty good.
That's it? No, it's-
Okay, on my left,
1-8.
1-8. In the middle,
22.
22. And on my right,
On your right, 16, and could I suggest perhaps neon cards next year? Because some of these just blend in with the background.
oh, good thought. Okay, what number again? One.
Or
One-
cards that are the same color.
What was the total? 1-6. Okay. So, Ms. Herrick, what's the bet tally?
56 no.
Whoa, 54 yes, 56 no. It does not pass. We're now back to the article itself. You may stand up to the microphone, Mr. Rogers. Yeah. Well, he might have a point of order. Hold on a sec.
I think we're going to need some legal help here, but why couldn't we put something like to successes and assigns as their interests may appear?
Well, we moved the question, Mr.
Well-
Rogers, so they're correct. They've moved the question, so we have to vote it now. Okay? All right. So, thank you, Kathy. So, Article 18, as written. All those in favor, please signal by saying
Mr.
aye.
Moderator, the
I'm
selectmen
sorry.
have,
Whoa. Did I not get the selectmen's recommendation?
for purposes of discussion, I recommend that the selectmen approve.
Okay.
Second.
Sorry.
Any discussion?
That that was just too close.
Yeah.
Let's have our discussion, our moments, and then give it back to the discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
We're to confess.
Okay. Now we're ready to vote on the article. Okay? All those in favor of Article 18, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. The ayes have it. The article is passed. And we are adjourned. 2:30.